If we could go ahead and kind of get started here this evening. I know we're running a few minutes late. I tell you what, we do, since there's only four of us here this evening yet right now, we're going to unofficially start by just running through the items. We can't actually start the meeting or take a vote or approve the agenda. So we'll just start with some of the items and start discussing, and then we'll maybe do a redirect as soon as we get a fifth member here. Or, no, sorry, I guess we'd need to be a sixth member here. So in that case, just looking at the agenda here, we do have the first item there that has the architect's report under the capital projects report. So SSOE, if you want to go ahead and get started, Dwayne.
Happy New Year to everyone. How do you want to approach, in the past I've narrated through, and then we've evolved to if there's any questions. You mean narrate through?
Go ahead and narrate.
Okay.
We're killing time right now.
All right. Reports, Central's obviously the most thing that we got some input on. I think Bell's still doing an awesome job. Weather and holidays, hurt things a little bit, but they did some more asbestos abatement during the holidays, so I think the cold temperatures and maybe some rain may not have helped on getting some of the roof done, but they're still proceeding very well. Currently, we've been talking about some potential things for some savings. One of the things is to remove restrooms there at the gym. I know there's been some prior discussion about that. It would require a variance from code, and we as SSOE, we're not recommending that. And we've sent the director a letter requesting that he would put in writing that against our recommendation, he wants us to proceed with that design. Now, being a variance, we could go through the work, be presented to the state fire marshal and the local authorities. If they did not approve it, then it would not be approved for construction. But so that's one thing. Second thing, we had a meeting today. We talked about bathrooms today, but we talked about the event entry. There's been some suggestions on how to reduce some of the masonry, and we had a fairly lengthy discussion about that today, and we had some ideas, and I think we may be working toward a compromise of the aesthetics that we think would probably have the savings, but also maybe have a little more appeal than maybe what's been presented. The acid dilution tank, that's been an item. I think that's been resolved for the most part at this point in time. And we've offered some things that would save in relation to that. In all the VE things, there's been quite a few drawings that have been revised. And so I've provided the current costs on a page. You see, let's see, we're up to bulletin number 6. You'll see one was no charge, one was 46,000. So that's the range from 0 to 46,000. The 46,000, we changed basically about 80 drawings. And so that incorporated a whole list of VE items that were incorporated, and part of the reason for the change so that if a code official is on site looking at the drawings, they've got actual drawings that are sealed that incorporate the changes. The next item, there's been a lot of discussion over the past about the additional seismic reinforcement that was required as a result of TTL, the geotechnical engineer. And Hewlett Spencer was saved you a lot of money by going and getting a second consultant. And, we wrestled through the different design values they provided, and we came to an agreement that we could accept because it was from a professional licensed engineer. And we talked through their philosophy, and basically it evolved that TTL, the consultant that's been used for multiple of your projects, looked at 2 areas of the code where really it looked like they only needed to look at one. Their thing was not necessarily wrong, it's just maybe more conservative. So anyway, there's 217,000 of additional reinforcement that was in place to keep things moving. And so the question has come up, how do you pay for that? Well, it's been known from day one that the guaranteed maximum price would be based on incomplete documents. And I think in our first meeting, we threw out the term 75% documents. Well, it is, this added reinforcement is, and I've stated this before, is not something they could have anticipated in their GMP. I mean, we didn't anticipate it. And if we'd had a little more timely response from the geotechnical engineer, we probably wouldn't be having the discussions. But all that said, the whole contingency is for the purpose of covering unknown costs. So it's our opinion that it should be taken out of contingency. It's not like you would select, I mean, there's been items taken out of contingency already, and it's not like you should be selective and take just the lower value items, but then you hit a big ticket item that it's still, that's what the contingency for. And so we would recommend the board to go ahead and recommend taking out contingency. Now, my understanding with our progress meetings, we go over it every progress meeting, which is every 2 weeks. You take that out and you're still about 1.5 million left in contingency. So I think Bill especially has been very instrumental in watching costs, and you know, like I say, we continue to look for VE items, and Hewlett Spencer's continue to look for the savings. The next item is the 5-year plan. No real change, but we'll present that here shortly. And then the last thing on the agenda, or my memorandum, is the crack reports. Hadn't been any further discussion. I mean, it's basically determined it's not a time-sensitive thing except just remove anything loose, but then I'm sure we'll be discussing that further as time presents itself. So be glad to entertain any questions.
Yeah, I have some questions. Go ahead, Stan.
I would just add that with that, and Mr. Hibden is correct, we haven't moved forward. We're waiting for the result of our assessment. Since it was determined not to be a critical issue, we're going to come back to you once the facility assessment is through, and there'll be a long list of things, and we'll see how it fits in that list. So that's where we are on that.
A medium list, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, I can be hopeful. That's what I assume when in seeing the report, and I appreciate you putting that together. That's what I assume we would be talking about that within the scope of the full assessment. I do have some questions for you.
Sure.
I'm still a little confused about the geotechnical survey stuff. And maybe you can help me here. It seems like this was a mistake that was made. And not getting into what paying for it. I guess I'm just confused. Was this a mistake? It seems like that Hewlett Spencer couldn't have anticipated this because it was something that I think everybody agrees now wasn't necessary with the time to look at. Now, I know it seems like they've done quite a bit of legwork to try to prove that it wasn't necessary from the beginning. And I guess I'm just confused about how did we get to the point where we had an unnecessary thing put in there?
I don't know that it would be considered a mistake. Now,
I consider a several $100,000 added expense to be a mistake.
okay, that's a matter of opinion. And the I guess where I'm headed with this is, I think Steve may have mentioned it, and he can comment also. You ask half dozen engineers to size a beam, you may have, 6 different sizes. Now, they all ought to be relatively in the same weight, some might end up having the same, but, some of them may look at it a little bit more and have deflection as what they really want to look at, and stiffness, or depending on how the thing's in the system, there could be a variety of how that beam actually translates in on a drawing. Well, TTL is the engineer that's done Marvin Wright as well as Spring Hill Middle School.
Mm-hmm.
Also did a report for the central office. And back on Marvin Wright, I know they saved you money by, we actually shifted the site and got the owner to donate different property. And so their opinion was that you need to look at two different sections of the code.
Well, I
We
guess,
came to the understanding that.
okay.
you
Well, I
probably-
guess, I think there
That
was
was a
some original.
conservative view, you know.
There was some original reporting that I think we had to go back, and that was the purpose of this. They thought there was a reason they had to go back and do it again, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Well, basically, it started back, the board authorized us to
Sure.
contract
Yeah,
with
it
them
wa-
back
it
in
was some older stuff.
2012.
Okay.
Then the project went idle. When it kicked back up in a, mad rush, in order to hit the summer window, we noticed that they hadn't given us their final report. When we asked for it, it took months to get. And
When you say months to get, I guess it was after we had already approved this, or?
Yeah, after they'd already done the work. And basically, they said they needed to do one more piece of work. And so it's like, in order to confirm that it was in accordance with 2012 IBC, and so we said, go do it, because it was still within their funds that had been approved by the board back in 2012. And so when they did that, they came back and changed the values.
So I guess that's the point where I'm a little confused about. I mean, was that not a red flag? I mean, I understand there's some different opinions.
Yeah.
Was that not a red flag to you guys that,
It
hey,
is.
maybe we should?
We asked them, why did it change? And the explanation we got was that, yeah, they didn't go do any additional borings. It was evaluation of additional seismic data that is collected
Some different
all
calculations.
the time.
They use some different
Yes.
factors for their calculations.
Yes.
Okay.
And so we questioned it. They said, no, that's correct. And so we proceeded, and I think in about 3 weeks after we had the revised data, we issued the revised drawings. Surprise to everyone, the order of magnitude that the change was.
So those changes didn't surprise you guys. You just
No,
went with it.
No, it did, but we're obligated to use the geotechnical engineer's recommendations. And after we questioned it and they explained the rationale behind it, their rationale seemed legitimate. And so we knew we were in a mad rush to get things, contracted, final documents issued. And so we revised the documents and issued what became revision 1, I believe it was. Anyway, it was after GMP was provided. So
Okay. But you're satisfied that what we've got now is correct?
I'm satisfied that it meets code. And it's a legitimate report. PSI is the engineers that Hewlett Spencer hired. I mean, they're nationwide.
Okay.
If we had and we had discussions with them, they actually did not even get their local people to do the report. They actually got people on the West Coast, which we've got our department head for our structural group is out of USC and has studied seismic, design extensively. So after talking with them, and our department head was part of the discussion, we evolved that, okay, this is legitimate. It is sealed by a registered engineer, and that we can accept the values. So then we revised the design.
Okay. Did you have Mr. Penny?
No.
Any other board members, any discussion on that? Or anything else that SOE has come up on that? Dwayne, I think, oh, yes, sir.
You were satisfied with the first study, that was the right one?
At the time that the data was provided, yes.
And now a new study costs $217,000.
No, sir, the study didn't. You've
The
got a
reinforcement and
you got a
everything.
stiffer building as a result of additional reinforcement caused by the first study.
And I'm kind of like Mr. Moore. 217,000 sounds like a mistake to me.
The other thing, you did mention something about there had been some discussion, I guess in the last couple of days about the event entrance, some changes there.
Actually, this morning.
You think there's some compromise worked out or some,
I think we're headed to an agreeable solution. Is that fair to say, Mr.?
On what now?
the event entrance.
Yeah,
The meeting that he referred to this morning, we went into some detail, and as of right now, we're still working on that. Should have an answer for you at the meeting next month. And of course,
Perfect.
that's the next phase
Sure.
that we'll do after school's out next year. And so we've got time to deal with that. And it would be better, we're trying to come up with an answer that satisfies both the savings that we were trying to get to and the aesthetics that they were trying to accomplish, which would be the best of all solutions
Okay.
that we can get there. But Ms. Huff and one of their other designers named Tim Schwartz, who's in Toledo, Ohio with their company, during the meeting today, they had it on the screen, and we were talking through, basically we had their original design that was very expensive. Then we had an alternate design that we did, the Hewlett Spencer and Bell team did. And so you can appreciate, and it doesn't hurt my feelings that they didn't think we did a very good job of redesigning what they'd done originally. But they had some ideas about how to take the reductions that we had put in cost and change those things around in such a way to achieve the continuity of the aesthetic that was intended by SSOE in the first place. And so right now, the ball is in the court of Ms. Huff and Mr. Schwartz and us, with Tyler Powell of Bell taking the lead on the cost side of it, looking at some changes that we're going to work through and come up with what will be the third design that we hope can, and our objective is to give you the same savings but create a better aesthetic. And that's what we're trying to accomplish right now.
All right, thank you, Steve. I want to reiterate too, from our, when this whole discussion, when we brought Hewlett Spencer Bell on and we worked through this process, I know, and the other board members feel free to chime in on that as well. I know that was one of our driving forces was for bringing them in was to have savings but still get a good product, and not just an okay product, but a good product or a good quality product up to the level of what SSOE had drawn for us and what we had all agreed on. So I know that's something that was important to us. But, I'm glad to hear that you guys are working towards a solution on that, because that's exactly the kind of work towards saving us money and still giving us a good product. That's the kind of thing I know I want to hear as we move forward, because I have a feeling we may end up needing that money in other places as we continue along anyway.
Yeah. And that meeting was just at 9 o'clock this morning, so we have to be able to make those changes and then price them out with the subcontractors.
Sure.
That's why we can't give you an answer tonight.
Well, then I look forward to seeing that at the next meeting, and we can go over that in detail. Mr. Penny?
Well, when I had the meeting in November, Jamie showed me the original drawings of the event entrance, their concept of the event entrance, and if you can meet in the middle and make it look beautiful like the original one was, I don't have a problem, and I think that's why we have both of you gentlemen here, is to meet in the middle and kind of work things out, hopefully.
Pardon me, I want to say one more thing while we're on this subject, so I won't bring it up in my report. But in the meeting this morning, I complimented SSOE on 3 things about that event's entrance and area. And that is, number one, when people come in that entry and walk in there for the first time, the volume of the space is going to be breathtaking. It's wide, it's long, it's tall. The next thing that's going to impress them, the structural choices, which are laminated wood beams that are very beautiful as well as structurally and integral to the thing. They're going to make an impression when you walk in there. And their objective in that, as they've shared with us, was because of the beauty of the wood in the old gym that was there, to try to have something in this new building that would remind people of that. So that's the second thing. And the third thing, there's some fans that are huge that are important. They're not just pretty, they're part of the circulation and the airflow in the space, but they're really impressive. So if if you only painted the walls and had block walls painted, when you got those three things in there, it's breathtaking. But they've added this other, and we're working to where this other can be some highlights that'll be affordable and add to the beauty of the space that is innate in that space. Just the things I've mentioned are enough that people will go away from this school talking about, have you seen Columbia Central High School's activities area? Have you been in there yet? Well, you ought to go by there and see it. It's worth going by, even if you're not going to a basketball game or a play or whatever, so.
All right, thank you. Any other comments from board members? It's just four of us. Y'all can chime in anytime you feel like it. Dwayne, if you don't have anything else, I guess we can move on past that. I appreciate it. Well, I guess we had the 5-year report. Do we want to go over that let's have at it. We can dig into that as well.
All right, and I think you all have a copy of it in your packets as well.
We do. Yes, thank you.
It's not easy reading, it's not fun reading, but I'll just kind of hit the highlights, and if you have questions, you can just ask at any time, and I can kind of give you the background, because a lot of work did go into making some assumptions, and it's not all in this presentation here, so.
If you don't mind when you do this, can you just kind of help us by also, because I've got it here, and I
I've
know
got
we
it
got here,
all.
make sure we're all on the same page
Yeah.
on the best picture.
All right, so I've got my little pointer here. All right. So what the first sheets in the presentation kind of give you, basically I have baseline data, I have an analysis, and I have recommendations. The baseline data is, I took it from the United States Census, and then also the University of Tennessee Business and Economic Research. They have a really good department on keeping demographics for the state of Tennessee. So I use those two as my reference for a lot of this baseline demographics. So as you know, Maury County, the population in 2010, which was the last census, is around 81,000. And there's an unincorporated and an incorporated part of the county, which we all know. The unincorporated includes the Culleoka, Hampshire, Santa Fe, and Williamsport. That total population for that unincorporated area is around 35,000, 34,690. And then from 2000 to 2010, the census had shown a 17.6% growth in that area. So that just kind of giving you some baseline on what's happened since 2000. In the incorporated areas, Mount Pleasant, City of Columbia, and Spring Hill, the population of Mount Pleasant, 4,500, City of Columbia is around 34,600. Very, very similar to the unincorporated area. And then Spring Hill is in the 7,000 range. The growth for Mount Pleasant from 2000 to 2010 was 1.6%. For Columbia, we had 4.9, not bad. Spring Hill was 276%. So obviously that's where the majority of the growth has happened, is in the Spring Hill part of Maury County. So also of consideration is that persons under 5 years of age, obviously because we're looking at schools, in 2010 was 7.2, and in 2013 we're at 6.8. So it's not a lot of change, a little bit of a deduction, but it's about the same. Persons under 18 years of age, in 2010, 24%, and 2013 we're at 23%. So again, that's about the same. So there's not a lot of change there in school age children in the community. Average per household is 2.51, and that is from 2009 to 2013, so that's pretty accurate, I think, even going forward. Okay. This right here is, you've probably all seen this, this is your official zoning map for Maury County, and here it's delineated certain areas that are demarcated for industry, for development residentially, and all of that. The greater part of that that's white is rural development. So that just kind of tells you where we are now, and that was done in 2013. So that's pretty recent. Okay. This one is a development concept that was commissioned in 2011, and this was a vision toward the development of the county, and it took in consideration how things were already developed, and then The 2013 kind of took some stuff from this and started to implement some of these things that conceptually were suggested for the county. You can see here, just as a highlight, this corridor is where your maximum growth is. Columbia here has an urban center. Up here in Spring Hill, we're still considered suburban. Down here in Mount Pleasant, this is considered suburban. And then you can kind of see it kind of skews off towards 65, which is pretty common. I mean, you've got a major thoroughfare there, and then you have this thoroughfare here. This area, as you can see, is mostly undeveloped rural areas. There's a few little areas like these little pods here that are outliers. Those are rural pods, so they're potential development for smaller little community centers to develop and then kind of come out from that, but still stay very rural. So this is the plan that Murray County devised in 2011. So that's kind of where we started. Okay. Now this is a map that I did that combines both of those. And what I did is I combined both of those maps, and then I did an analysis of what has already been developed versus what's still out there to be developed given these zones. So when you look at this map, this yellow is of concern because this yellow is what is suburban residential development that is not developed or underdeveloped at this time. That's your potential for people moving in and houses being built. The dark blue areas around the yellow, those are suburban areas, but they're already developed. You already have your subdivisions and such already developed in there. So you kind of see they're right here at the edge of the border between Murray County and Spring Hill proper. Then here there's a little bit, but as we'll get into it later, that there's a moratorium on building in that area, so that's kind of off the table for now. Here there's a little bit around the center of Columbia, but the majority is up here. Now this lighter brown here is considered your rural residential development. And where it's a little bit darker is where you already have a medium density, which kind of is no longer rural. It's an acre or more. But these more developed areas are half acre. So they're starting to almost be suburban. So there is a potential for this area that's in the lighter shade to become more dense over time. It might change because it's there, and as people sell their property and start subdividing, that is a potential. Because again, this is not set in stone. This is just, the zoning board has not said that yes, that has to happen. So it's open, so it could happen. So you can see that the majority of that is over here. There's a little bit down here, but the majority is to the north. Okay. Now here's just to give you a baseline of the schools that you have and where they're located along the corridor here. And then there's some stats that we got from the schools about when the building was built, how many capacity it can hold, the square footage, that kind of thing. Okay. Now here is some baseline data on attendance. And the total attendance for Murray County schools from the 2014 to 2015-16 school year is about 4% more kids, okay? There's a few schools here that are highlighted that actually reduced in their population, and it's probably for various reasons. Obviously, Mount Pleasant middle and high school, they're not getting as many elementary moving in because there's not many things being built, so there's not an added population, so those are tending to reduce in numbers. So. And that will probably continue until the moratorium is lifted and another building happens. So those you can probably anticipate are going to get lower and lower as it goes. The Whitthorne middle, it's not a huge drastic. It's just but it did reduce a little bit there. Okay. Okay. So then I go into the analytical data and I broke it out into the unincorporated, the incorporated, and then the Spring Hill, Columbia, and Mount Pleasant. And basically what happens here, the 2020 census estimate, they did give an estimate on what they think is going to happen in this community. But I didn't just go with that. I actually contacted all of the permitting offices for the city and the county. And I pulled all of the building permits for residential development from 2010 until or 2000 to 2010. So to get an idea of how much was being built in that time, and then see what the census said. So sometimes it's about the same, sometimes it's very skewed. So, so I'd use both of them to kind of make these assumptions. And so you'll see that at the beginning of each of these. The 2020 census said 1% growth for the unincorporated area. Again, that's the Hampshire, Culleoka, and Santa Fe schools. And then, so in 2020, that's going to give you around 35,000 people. And then that calculates out to 172 people, and from that, 29 school-aged children. Building permit information was a little more, about 5% growth is what we're seeing. So that bumps it up a little bit. So you're looking at 663 units. So that is just single-family residential units, because the unincorporated is only single-family permits, because Murray County doesn't do the multi-unit housing. So this is just single families. So that's going to give you about 300 kids. So that's a bit different than 29. So I went ahead and took worst-case scenario. Let's just see what happens. And what we get here, we're still okay. Our numbers are still okay as far as capacity for these schools. You can see this little 20%, 50%, 30% here. That is a weighted measure of students' distribution based on their location geographically, because you're not going to get as many over here as you're going to get over here versus over here. So I just kind of weighted it based on that and then distributed the numbers. But then again, once you look at it, you're still under capacity. So you're fine there. The only thing that I could recommend is that the assessment be done, which you're having done, and that there might be some major renovation or minor repair depending on how the school is now. So once they get in there and they can assess it and see how your major systems are and how the building is doing, you may not have to do a whole lot. So other than that, you won't have to add on or add capacity or anything for any of those schools for probably a while, I'd say. Okay. This one is Mount Pleasant again, 0. They've only had 10 building permits in the last 5 years. So yeah, we're saying net 0, so they're all fine. Again, age of the buildings, probably some maintenance that needs to happen. The elementary and high schools are a bit older, so there might be more renovation there than the other, but again, they might be in fine shape. But as far as capacity goes, they're fine. Okay, here is, we're going to start with Columbia. Now, Columbia is broken up into 3 different units as I've done this. We've got the urban area, which is the center. Then we've got a southern region, and then we've got the northern region, which is shared with Spring Hill. So here, what I did, again, I went through the census, I went through the building permits. They're pretty close. The estimated number of kids in the school system, 719 from the census. From the building permits that I pulled, which is about 1,696 units, that does include multi-unit housing, about 720. So pretty close on that, which is expected because a lot of that's already developed. So there's not a lot of places to develop. So there's pretty much an equal net change. So for this, I just distributed, and what these numbers include is the migration of students through from elementary all the way through, and then adding these students. So these numbers, these total projected enrollment numbers, include the migration and include the new together. So that is your anticipated total of students in 2020. So like Highland Park is at 317, 418, 350, and they're right under capacity. So these are all capacity-wise fine. Again, the assessment major innovation, potentially at Highland Park and Riverside, you probably are going to have to replace McDowell at some point because it's almost 100 years old. So, so that one, that's the only one that's really going to maybe need to look at pretty soon. Okay. The southern region, and it's including Brown, Baker, and Woodard, and these are the elementary schools, and the next slide will show the high school and middle school. But these 3, what I've done here, again, we take the same numbers, and what I've done is I've split them between north-south equally, and then I distributed them through the schools weighted. So there is a method to the madness, believe it or not, but depending on where they are and how close they are to things that could be developed is how it got weighted. So if something is closer to areas that can receive more homes, it got a higher rating. So you can see Brown Elementary, because of its location, it has a 50% rating, so that's going to get 50% of that split of kids. Okay? And again, on those, they're all fine. Again, the age, that's the only problem there. This is the southern region for the middle school and the high school. Obviously, we're building a new high school, which projected analysis is actually going down. So student capacity will be 1,600 when we get finished. The anticipated 2015 to 2016 is 1,346. By 2020, we're looking at 1,370, something like that. So it's going to remain stable, but it's not going to hit that top like it did there for a little while. It's going to balance out itself. And then Whitthorne is going to reach capacity because it's feeding, all these elementary schools are feeding into Whitthorne. It is going to reach capacity, I think, in 2018, I believe?
2018, yes.
Yeah, 2018. So it'll exceed its capacity, actually. The student capacity is 1,200. It'll be around 1,260. So depending on how it's distributed within the programs, it could be fine, but you're gonna be full. It's gonna be full. So so that's one of the main things that we found there, is that Whitthorne might have some issue coming up in the next few years. Okay, next. And so this was just a suggestion for Whitthorne, that you could actually add on another wing, so you could actually develop this without disturbing the rest of the school. It can stay in play, and then you can actually have another wing that you could divide the grades and have a second cafeteria, have a second kind of thing, so that you're not overwhelming what's already there and doing a reno that's going to be expensive. You just add new, and then just kind of break the, because in middle school you can kind of separate the younger from the older and kind of get them separate, and that's okay. So so that's just an idea, and you have this is the site right now. Obviously this is central, this is the site. It would come over here. So you do have the space for it. Parking might be a little tight, but you do have the space to actually get that other wing in there, which is basically this and this cafeteria space-wise. So you'd have a new loading dock, cafeteria, and then 2 levels of classrooms. So it's just an idea thrown out there that would solve that issue. Okay, now this is the northern region. The northern region gets a little crazy because it's part Columbia, part Spring Hill. So again, we're taking the same numbers, I split them. This is Spring Hill Elementary, Howell Elementary, and Wright Elementary. This is the Columbia side of it, and this first number is the capacity for migration plus the Columbia number. This other number, this 120, that's the Spring Hill number. So I just put them together here. You'll see the same thing on the Spring Hill slide. So that's giving you a total capacity for both Columbia and Spring Hill hitting those schools. So each of these is, you're in capacity, right? The age of them, pretty good. I think it was the Spring Hill, you might have some major renovations depending on once you get the utilities or the HVAC updated, it might not be too bad, but you might want to do some window replacement, things like that, just for energy efficiency. But again, the assessments will tell you that. And then Howell is a bit older, so you might, it's 1997. There might be some issues starting to come up with that one. And then mostly just maintenance on Wright. Just keep maintenance, and it should be good to go. Okay. And then this is also the northern region. We're hitting the middle schools and the high school. So here, Cox Middle, Spring Hill Middle are your 2 middle schools that you have here. And both of those through the migration are going to be fine. They're getting close. The Spring Hill Middle, it'll get a little tight there for a while, but it should be okay. You know, you just have to kind of be creative with class size and stuff. The Spring Hill High School, however, is going to have a bust in 2016 because of migration and because of new population. You're going to exceed about 1,200 this coming year. And it's only going to get more after that. It just goes up and up and up. So, so that's, I think, the next big need is Spring Hill High, because when you look at the building itself, there's no easy way to add on to that building. So, so that, just that being said, that's kind of one thing that we're going to look at when I make the recommendations, that Spring Hill High, we might need to look at another solution. Okay? Okay, and here's Spring Hill. Again, we have Spring Hill Elementary and Wright Elementary. You'll see again, the numbers are the same because I added them together already on both slides, just to show you how the migrations and then the added population. Okay. Again, same thing with the middle and the high school. Okay. And then here we come to the recommendations, and because of kind of what we went through here, we do know that the majority of your population is going to start in here, just because of its geographic location and closeness to 65 and Nashville, and because this is, you know, there's not a whole lot to build out right there. Here, you can't do anything right now without some major infrastructure. So this is where it's going to happen. So my suggestion is to actually look for a new campus site. Not saying you have to build it now, but look for it, because it's a lot of acreage that you're going to have to look for. So instead of placing a high school over here and a high school and a middle school over here, and make a campus, kind of like we've done in Central. You've got your elementary, you've got your middle, and you've got your high school right there on one site. So you can share some things. You can have some overlap. And it's a lot easier for transportation, for all kinds of reasons. So for a campus of that size, and that's an elementary of 500, a middle school for 1,000, and a traditional high school for 1,500. It's about a normal range of student population, and that can go up or down depending on what you would decide on later. Well, you would need 90 to 100 acres of buildable site. So that, given terrain and all that good stuff, could be a little bit more, could be right at, just depends. So, and I would suggest this area right here. This is where you've got, it's considered rural, residential, but you've got a lot of density happening now. So this would be a good place to start looking to find something, because it's going to build all around it. And so it's actually more centralized, and it'll be easier for people to get there in the future. And also, you'll have land, because you don't want to get it all developed and then there's no place to put anything, and you're just stuffing them everywhere. So, so I think that would be a proactive approach. And here are just some, sizes and some, really high estimate kind of costs, just, square footage kind of stuff. So just to give you an idea of what maybe to plan for in the future, one thing, go ahead and go to the next slide. Your immediate need, again, is the Spring Hill High School. One thing you could do, this is kind of a timeline, if you wanted to get started on that, to get it built in time for when you really need it, when you really hit major capacity there. You concurrently would be buying property now, you develop the plan and program, and within, a year and a half after that, you're done, so you can get it and get it used. Now, if you don't want to do that right now, obviously you've got a major construction happening, you could actually bus students to Central High School, because you do have capacity there. So that might be the students that are more closer to the core of Columbia could start going to that high school, and the ones that are closer to Spring Hill can go to the Spring Hill High School. Just in the meantime, until, populations start evening out. Like I said, if Mount Pleasant gets infrastructure and starts developing, that's going to boom. And then Central's going to get hit, because they're all not going to go to Mount Pleasant, because Mount Pleasant is about where it needs to be. And as soon as that starts booming, Central's going to get hit, and it's going to get full. Mount Pleasant's going to get full, and then you're going to need something to the north. So it's really just a timing kind of thing. You probably have about 5 years to really play with it. But I think beyond 5 years, Of course, I wish I had a crystal ball, I don't know, but, you know, you're probably gonna need to move on something within 5 years. Then, of course, Whitthorne Middle School, it's a 3-year requirement. Within 3 years, they're gonna hit capacity, so you're gonna wanna think about what you wanna do there. There's not an easy middle school busing kind of thing for that one. But for the high school, yes, it is a little bit longer, but, you know, you have a brand-new school, it has enough capacity, and it has, you know, everything you need for the time being. So it may not be that much of a problem for a lot of the students. Okay, and that's it.
Well, yes, I appreciate you being able to, I know we kind of delayed this process
That's
for you to be able to
okay.
explain it to us, but it was very helpful to have you explain it, because
There's a lot
some of
going
it didn't
on,
make sense when
yeah.
I was reading it myself.
There's a lot going on. I have
and
a
I-
lot of calculations.
And I do
going on,
appreciate
yeah.
the explanation of where some of your numbers came from, because
Yeah.
that helped me.
Yeah.
Just, and again, not calling you wrong on that, I found this kind of interesting, because some of the conclusions you came to were kind of not what I had assumed or what I had been looking at. A little different. I was expecting more of a boom. And again, we may still compile this and look at it, and there may be some other factors that we look at too, but I was kind of expecting more of a, along the lines of the issue we saw with Marvin Wright with population and capacity issues there. So I was expecting more of an elementary school problem to be more immediate.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
having a daughter at Spring Hill High School, knowing that their freshman class is insanely large right now, I do see where that is a big
It is
problem
just
at
because all of
Spring
those
Hill
are
High
feeding
School.
into it, yeah. It's, you know, you only have 2 high schools here, so.
Well, any board members, and Kristen, nice to see you. Anybody have any other questions or want to ask any questions other than that? I appreciate it, and
Great.
thank you. And I'm assuming we'll definitely work this in once we get our full assessment, and just add this to the pile of things we get to review. It's a big pile, isn't it, Stan? Okay, thank you very much. You know, at that, we do have a project cost report on that, and I don't think there's anything, Stan, if there's really nothing that stands out that we need to go over, unless you're something that if everybody's had a chance to kind of look that over.
Are you moving on to that before the train report?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Or the Hewlett, I mean, I don't know if there's anything else from Mr.
I am skipping ahead of things.
Hewlett or-
Spencer. Yes, thank you, Stan. I appreciate that. Let's go ahead and just go with item B, Hewlett Spencer. I apologize for that, Steve. If you could go ahead and get started.
So it's our turn,
Yes, it is.
and Dwayne left the mic on for me. I'm going to ask Jamie to hand out these 2 sheets of paper, and I'll explain them. Before I talk about the progress on the building, we've been asked by y'all to give you an update on the value engineering on the school. And if you look at the 8.5 by 11 single sheet first, let me walk you through those real quickly. You may recall, you actually have a GMP that's a little higher than that, but there are things like our fee, nothing important, but there's some other things in the GMP to y'all. This is the GMP to me that we use. This is the construction, hard cost of construction GMP. And then, so that's what we're looking at here. Addendum number 2, on January 13th, 2016, brought in what ended up being another $1,564,092 of scope or growth in the project. And that would have brought the GMP up to $44,102,693. But the VE reductions that and that's where this sheet comes in, or sheets, I should say. This big log lets you see, and this represents months and continuing. We're still continuing to do value engineering to find places where we can give you the quality without the cost, and trying to find alternatives. And there was one up here. Well, and now back to the 8.5 by 11 sheet, and because this is going to help you with part of it. The things, look below the top there of the GMP and the value, and the revised GMP including accepted changes. Look down below that on the 8.5 by 11 sheet. You see the savings included in the GMP? You see that total of $953,376. Those 6 items were things that were identified and agreed to while we were in the bidding and process and putting together the GMP. Those are things that if we had not identified those, and the team was working on that. This included SSOE, Bell, and Hewlett Spencer. And bidders were making suggestions. Bidders who didn't know whether they would get the bid or not and weren't guaranteed they would get the bid were making suggestions and bringing ideas to us. This process, this is one of the reasons that this process is of value to the customer over and above the other processes, because this is the process where these things can happen before you ever get your price. So in the bidding process, we found nearly $1 million. Let me say that so it exaggerates, but it's $953,376 that if the bidders had bid those things and they'd been included in the plans and specs finally, that's how much more your price would have been. So, and one of those things, and this is an example, that number 1 is just one example to tell you that, but the use of a metal roofing system in lieu of an approved manufacturer in GMP price, we call it proprietary specification when you designate a particular manufacturer in specs. And if you do that, then there's no competition. There are other people who make the same type product or the same product but put a different label on it, and it's just as good. But if you put a proprietary spec in, well, that's an $80,000 proprietary spec that was agreed to, that we would let other manufacturers propose their products and the bid, so we saved $80,000 on that particular item. So those are the types of things that were found before we got around to the VE list and working on the value engineering. I want to point out to you, there's on the front page of this, the big number of sheets, you'll see the green column. And look at the top of the green column and you see A for accepted, R for rejected, and P for pending. This didn't just happen because the list got made. This represents a lot of time and a lot of meetings, many, many man hours of work, and pardon me, Suzanne, woman hours too, in this process. But the team working together, going through all of these details, and you see some of them were accepted, some were rejected. And if you flip on over to the, you got to go past the 3rd page, but if you look on the 4th page, there's some other things there that are still pending. And all the white should be P's. Number 92 there is an A, and it should be a P. Because it is pending. But other than that, then there are other things that are going to come along and happen as we go through this process, because value engineering doesn't end when you use this process. And as we get into phase 2 and phase 3, there'll be more. But that's where we are now. Now, look at the top of the big sheet, and you see that the GMP was 42,538,601. The addendum number 2 added $1,564,092 for a total of $4,402,693. But because of the VE items that you see here, and on the 8.5 by 11 sheet, you see that the VE reductions were $1,562,558. So when you take the 42,540 and subtract the 42,538,601, you've got $1,534. $1,534 is all we're out of sync right now on added cost versus cost reductions. And that's really good to be at this point in the process. So if you have any questions about this before I move on with the report on the construction, I'll be glad to answer them.
I don't have any questions. I'm just going to say thank you because I know I've been asking for this since, this is what I've been wanting to see since day one. So I appreciate you guys
Okay.
getting this to us. And it is exactly what I was looking for.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Okay. Thank you. Now, wow, this project is moving along very nicely. The once every 2 weeks meeting that we have was Tuesday morning. Mr. Breeden and Mr. Hall were there. We couldn't do it without them. They are contributors to what, they represent you well. And we really appreciate the way they work with us to get this job done. And frankly, they are a critical part of keeping the job moving because we can't just arbitrarily make decisions of certain types. There's some kinds that we have to, but there are a lot of things that we have to run up the flagpole, so to speak, and they're very informed and very helpful and very available. So our appreciation to Stan and Dave for that. The school is moving along wonderfully well, and I could go into a lot of details. We have a schedule that takes us about 30 or 35 or 40 minutes to go through in the report, so I'm not going to do that to you tonight. But here's what I want to tell you. When I walked in after the meeting, and you walk into the school now, and Jim Penning's, it's mostly dry. Okay? Mr. Penning's came out on one of the hardest raining days, and there were an inch or two of water all over the thing before the roof got on, looking around. But it's mostly dry. But beyond that, a lot of it's cleaned up, and they're actually beginning finish work. There's a large section. If you're looking at the school from the road, we're building it from left to right. And that first phase in the first section on the left, almost to the middle of the school, they're already doing block filler. Now, before you paint, you fill the block. Everyone knows how coarse a concrete block is, so you put a filler on it to smooth it out. Then you put a coat of paint on it. Then you put another coat of paint. But right now, the block filler's already down. It's great to go walk in there. The block filler's already down nearly halfway of that building. And there's a first coat of paint on about a fourth of it. So that tells you we're starting to get into finishing items on the interior of the school now. The roof, I went up on the roof, and it's just some of the child in me still. I want to go through the whole building, but I also want to get up on the roof and look at what's up there. All of the heating and cooling units that are rooftop are already set and in place up there. That's an important element of the infrastructure of the school. It's there. But more importantly, for the drying out of the rest of it in lieu of other rains, the roofing is more than 3/4 of the way down. And they were up there working on Tuesday morning when I was up there with them. But the thing that I got excited about, Jamie and I hate to come to town without at least going by the job. So we got here early enough that we drove by, and up on the right end of the school, it's a big set of lights, and the roofing crew was up there tonight as the sun was setting, and they're up there right now working because it's going to rain sometime tomorrow afternoon and this weekend, but they're trying to get the roof finished up there, at least as much as they can finish on the drying in of it before that happens. So I really appreciate it when the subcontractors and our management of it look at the weather reports, and instead of just saying, oh, we're not going to be able to work tomorrow, they're out there doing what they have to do to get the school finished. So if there are any other questions you want to ask about that, or if there's anything that y'all think we ought to add to the report.
Any other board members have any questions they want to? Well, Steve, I appreciate the report, and again, I appreciate the spreadsheet with all the VE items. I know that's something I'd, like I said, been looking for the entire time, and hopefully we can keep seeing those, because I really like being able to see those numbers balance out. Well, in that case, if no one has any other questions, I know you had made a request if you guys could, I know Jamie's had kind of a rough week, and
He's wearing one of his neighbor's clothes.
well,
Those are not Jamie's clothes. Those aren't even your shoes, are they, Jamie? No. All of his clothes burn up or melted, so.
yeah. So definitely, I know
He's wearing his neighbor's clothes.
I know my thoughts are with Jamie. So if you guys, I know you've had a rough week. So if you guys need to get on out of here, that's I understand that completely. So thank you very much for the report tonight.
May I mention one more thing before
Sure.
we leave? This is an addendum to the report. There are services that we provide that are included in your paying us to build this school while we're available. If you ever want us or need us for any of those. In one county, they had some Title IX issues. We built a soccer field for them, and just work it into what we're doing. One school system, when they saw the efficiencies they were getting, the county commission had been wanting to put a new football field and track in. They had an old cinder track around their football field, and we put in University of Tennessee doesn't have a better football field or track. It's Olympic style track up there that we took that and did that for them, and were able to get them some cost reductions that they got it done for about $200,000 less. It would have been well over $1 million. It was a little over $800,000. There was a girls' softball field that didn't have restrooms or concession stand on one of the high schools, and so we built a concession stand, restroom, press box for them, those kinds of things. While we're here, and in that case, we found a local contractor and local people that made donations to it, so there were a lot of cost reductions on it. So anything like that, we help get parking lots paved. Y'all have got a good team that got a lot of that sort of thing done for you, but whatever we can do to help you with your school system while we're here working, we'd be happy to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Pennings.
We truly appreciate the offer, and after that 5-year report, the County Commission Chairman is here, and I think Mr. Shackelford got a few more gray hair just listening to the 5-year plan. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, well, if that's the case, you guys can go ahead and step out.
Very
Thank you.
kindly. Appreciate
And if you guys here on the board don't mind, now that we do have 6 members here, we may want to have to kind of start over and make this an official committee meeting, if you don't mind. For the record here, I guess we'll kind of restart things. But we do have 6 members here at this point. Everybody hopefully has had a chance to look at the agenda. And if so, if you have any questions or anything you want to add or remove from it, let me know. Otherwise, we can take a nomination, or not nominations. Motion. Thank you.
Second.
Motion and a second on the agenda. All in favor of that, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No, we're good. I think we're okay. We'll just move on through it. So we do have an agenda. We included in that agenda, there were also the minutes from the last meeting from December 1st. If anyone wants to make a comment on that, otherwise we can.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. So all in favor of approving the minutes from last meeting, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Okay, now we're officially called back up. Again, if we could move on to item number C, since we've already moved down through there. Any of the board members that had just arrived, do you have any questions on the previous items? If you wanted to re-ask or? Okay. In that case, then we'll move to item C, the train report.
Thank you. I know we're starting to go a little bit long, so we'll be brief again. I love it when I can be brief. And the report's in front of you, but a real quick summary. Basically, we've been working quite a bit on the control systems for Mount Pleasant, Spring Hill High, and Marvin Wright is where the vast majority of our controls work is. Been going on in the last 3 months, or last month, seems like 3 months. And then we've also put in, over the Christmas break, units at Colioca, Howe, and Cox.
Is that it?
Like I said, I'll be as brief as we
Okay.
can,
Well-
but open for questions. if-
Okay. I know there's been a couple of issues that have popped up at some of the schools as we've, obviously with these big swings in the temperature. I know we've had a couple of issues. I think y'all are kind of on top of most of those. Or
Yes.
anything standing out in that, or are you still working through most of those?
I'm still working through some of it, specifically the Withorn one.
Okay.
We made some programming, a real brief description of what happened is we had fluctuations in the gas pressure, which caused the boilers to shut themselves down for self-preservation. It was roughly about 3 o'clock in the morning. Stan let us know around 5:30, made it out there by about 6, got the boilers fired up. What we found is about 2/3 of the school came back up just fine. The other remaining third had frozen water lines in them. It was in braided stainless steel hoses, so that roughly third of the units did not come up immediately. We had to, it was into the evening before they were all back. I'd say all back, all but 3 were operational. Then the following morning, we either had temporary heat or the units back running by Tuesday morning.
Okay. Well, yeah, I definitely appreciate you guys' fast response on that. And again, I know with these temperature changes, we're seeing some issues pop up, and I'm sure as we keep going from 70 degrees to 7 degrees in a week and then back, I guess we'll keep seeing that. So I appreciate that. Any other board members have any questions for them? Mr. Beaver?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, of course, I'm most familiar with what's going on out at Colioca.
Yes, sir.
And it seems like it just daily they have failures. They have a lot of the units that's not, well, they keep getting failures on the indicator. And of course, they're not providing heat. You know, I walked through the school there, I think it's on Tuesday, in the elementary part, and here's every class that I walk by, the kids sitting there with coats on.
Okay.
How can we eventually get something done, finished where we got heat every day?
Right. We're continuously working on it as far as, we have people out there every week trying to work on these units. My initial first thought, and I'm not trying to throw anybody the wrong way or anything like that, is that particular water loop system still, it's not the only problem, but I think it's one of the largest contributors to the problem, is we're still fouling on quite a bit of the heat exchangers from the water flowing through the loop. That, like I said, that's not the only problem, but we got some system-wide issues that are, spotting, showing up intermittent. I know the county has spent a large amount of money with us out there fixing dozens and dozens, I don't know the exact number of units. And some of these, were fixed and are able to run for weeks and weeks, and then they show back up with another issue. So,
But is it anything that we can do as a board?
I think
To
they're
get-
making the right steps. Stan and the board, within the last few months, they've gotten water treatment in there. I think we went years, when I say we, I'm Murray County citizen also, went years without proper water treatment. And it's not, let's put the water treatment in it and it's fixed. I wish it was that easy. You got, 20, 30 years to build up in settlement, and when you go in and start cleaning up these loops, it takes time to break the detergent. The detergent breaks down basically the inside of the pipe and the settlement, and it starts settling out. We have y'all put filters, filter bank in there, and that's capturing it. Weekly, I think they're changing the filters, and every week you pull out a filter full of settlement. Well, the filter's only catching what goes through the filter. It's a side stream filter. The rest of that settlement is still circulating through that system.
Okay, like, I guess my lack of knowledge of the system, is there any way we could flush this whole system out?
That's part of the cleaning process. So they put the detergent in, circulate it, then you flush it. But let's think of a garden hose. So you're spraying the hose, and once you release that pressure, undo it, there's still all kinds of water in the system. Even if you take a air pipe or a compressed air and blow through that, you still have residue and water and just everything in that pipe. It doesn't just come out immediately if you flush it. Especially if you got a single pipe, you have a better chance. You don't have a single pipe. You got headers and side arms, and they little hoses that go down to little heat exchangers, and it's
Stan, is that something you can speak to, his question?
Just, I wanted to add to that we actually did over the fall break, where our maintenance department, just about all of our maintenance department, along working with several folks from Train, went through and flushed every unit. We back flushed every unit. We put an aggressive cleaner in the system to clean it. I think it made substantial progress. One of the things that is in, and John can probably explain this much better than me, but this problem rears itself more in hot water, heating conditions than cooling conditions. We didn't seem to be having these issues as much when we were in cooling season. We were having them last winter. They did a lot of work. We have been tracking it daily this week. We have about 15 units that, I know exactly which units that we're having the errors, like Mr. Beaver mentioned, and there's about 15 or 16 units. They have been going through and actually putting a special solution. It's called Red Lime, I think. Red Lime. It's a special solution they're putting actually in the coil of the unit to clean it out, because the coil, I guess, is a smaller pipe and it gets stopped up pretty easily. Let me just finish this, John, then I'll throw it back over to you. We actually today have just ordered a new filter that's a multi-stage filter. We implemented a new water treatment program in the summer. I think you all approved, I think it's June or July. And we're working with that company, and so we're buying another filter to try to put in line, like I say, a multi-stage filter to try to improve the filtering process. But we're continuing to try to work through this and narrow it down unit by unit. We do have space heaters in the rooms. Last year, you'll remember, I think we got in discussion about issues with fire marshal. We've got special permission from the state fire marshal's office to have these heaters, space heaters in the rooms. So we're trying to do everything we can to address that and working with trying to get this cleaned up. At this point, Train has committed us. They're not charging us any additional money for the work that's going on there now. They have workers there that they're doing this based on the money we've already paid them to clean this up.
Okay, one other thing, I think this is more towards Stan than to you, but as you and I've talked before about the air filters, I was there one day and Mr. Harris, myself, went through the school, and we was checking air filters, and there was some filters that had been in there, since August. It's my understanding they were supposed to be swapped out monthly.
No, sir, they're supposed to be swapped out quarterly. Our contract was to swap them out quarterly.
Okay, but then we got to noticing that some of the air filters was the wrong size air filters. And, is that good for our system?
No, sir, it's not, and we have a contract with a different company who
Right.
changes our filters. We have met with them. They've been back to the school, and to our knowledge, now, we've not gone through and checked it unit by unit. It's pretty extensive, but they have changed all the filters, put the correct size filters. We've met with them to address that. They've left us a supply of filters to change them. The quarterly quarterly system is what was recommended. It's what we're using in all our other schools. For some reason, we've got some rooms in that school that seem to get dirty much quicker. We've met with our janitorial company to talk about that, to try to address the problem. We've had them out there looking at it. We're at this point planning to go to a more frequent filter change in that school, which of course is a budget impact because you approved, and that's going to add to our budget. But our filter contract to maintain our filters is about $55,000 a year for all of our schools, and that's to change them quarterly. We're talking about looking at trying a 2-month schedule every 2 months instead of every 3 months to start to kind of work, but we've been meeting with the filter company. But you do bring up a good point, Mr. Beaver, that we did find that some of those filters did not get changed, and some of them had the wrong size. We actually have gone through and developed a map of the school now where every place a filter is marked, and they're checking off for us on that map that they've been changed.
You know, one thing you said there about changing quarterly or changing every 2 months, you know, what's different between those systems and my house system? Where, I mean, my wife's on me every 30 days, do this, and that's change the filter, the air filter to our unit. So, I mean, you know, why would we not?
That recommendation came from Train. Maybe John can speak to that. We actually got that recommendation that was the standard manufacturer's recommendation for changing those filters.
It just appears, I don't have the science behind it, but generally speaking, when we enter in we're not in the filter contract, but when we see them, they're typically quarterly. It's just based on past experience on what we see in schools and office buildings.
Okay. All right. Thanks, sir. Thank you.
And Randy just mentioned one thing. We are using a special type filter that they recommended to change quarterly. It's not just a filter. It's
Supposed to be using it.
That's right. We are supposed, and those were the right filter material. They were the wrong size. What had happened was it calls for a 60 by 10-inch filter in those particular units, and they were taping together 3 20 by 9-inch filters, and so they weren't the right size.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Briggs. Thanks, sir.
Well, I appreciate it. It does sound like, Stan, that you guys are on top of that. And obviously, I think to Mr. Beaver's point, if there's anything we as a board need to do, please let us know immediately so that we can take any action. And we appreciate you guys staying on top of that as much. And I do know part of the problem is, and just in my limited knowledge of these systems, I know part of this is that we added controls. And we're now seeing errors that were probably happening all along. We just didn't have the electronic controls that were tracking when those errors were popping up. And I know that's probably and we're now able to see them, log them, and otherwise somebody just would go flip a switch and turn it back on, and nobody knew the difference. So I think that's part of what we're trying to track down. I think it's heading in the right direction. It's just a bit frustrating on this end. I know trying to get these problems resolved, especially when we've got kids that are a little bundled up and they're trying to do classwork in there. I know it's difficult for them. So, any other board members have any questions for Train? Otherwise, we can move on to another item. All right, thank you, sir. Now, Stan, we can move on to the project cost report.
Yes, sir, I'll come up here. Just a couple of things I want to point out, really, on the capital project. You can see that our list is getting shorter and shorter as things are getting completed and removed from the list for all the projects that we've done in the last few years. If you look at the funding for this year, two things I want to call your attention to. The Spring Hill Elementary fire alarm replacement, you'll remember that's something we brought to you as an emergency situation, I think it was in November.
Yes.
And that was completed by the end of fall break, the Monday after fall break, Christmas break, excuse me, the end of Christmas break, by the Monday before the students went back to school, I guess, which would have been a week ago Monday. That really seems like about 2 months ago right now. But the State Fire Marshal's office came and did their inspection. We had the final report, and we're fully operational there. So
Good.
We've got to give kudos to the local company, Proventia, who did that for us, because that was pretty dramatic, the fact they were able to get new system design, walk through State Fire Marshal's office, and get it installed in that amount of time.
Yes, thank you very
So
much.
we really want, the only other one, unless you have any questions, is under Spring Hill High School roof repair. We're still showing the full amount there. We have You all did approve for us to go ahead and do $7,000 for preliminary repairs, which have come out of that. Those are just about finished, aren't they, Dave? I think.
There's a couple of spots, I met with the roofer today, there's a couple of spots on the ridge that they need to address, but, and we've looked at the rest of the, school and the roof, and he seems to think that we're probably about 90% complete with the entire school of what needs to get done, so we don't have a whole lot more to do.
But we're probably going to have to add to that a little bit for these additional areas, and we'll bring that back to you probably
Okay.
next month
All right.
when we get that fully. But other than that, unless there's some questions, if you have questions about this, we'll be glad to answer those.
Do any board members have any other questions on that? We can go ahead and move ahead then.
Okay.
Oh. Go ahead.
Are we still on pace to get the facilities audit back next month?
We are. We have been meeting with them weekly. Right now, we've actually got 7 reports in that we've gone through. There's preliminary reports, so what they always do is they submit them to us, we go through, there's a couple questions we have, and they go back and research. I don't know where we at on number of schools they've actually walked through, Dave. They're walking through 2 or 3 this week, I know. But we are still scheduled to have that completed by mid-February. Now, you know, with this meeting schedule change that we've made, I'm not sure that if that will be ready in time for this meeting if we do it on the second Thursday. And I was thinking about that earlier. If we get that, if you all would want to do a special meeting or a later meeting, or how you'd want
We
to
were
do
going
that
to
for the
talk about that,
presentation.
but yes, I think it's appropriate that we probably, as soon as we have that and we have time as a board to review it, we will probably look at having a separate, specially called, or a special committee meeting that's the only thing we're going to address. I think it's worthy of us to kind of devote that time to it.
If it would be okay, we will try to have something to you before the board meeting, the last of this month, to know of an estimated, a pretty firm date of when we think we'd be able to do that.
That would be great. Okay. Mr. Lindsay, that answers all your question? All right. Any other questions on that? Otherwise, we can move to the next item.
So the next item is a recommendation, and this has to do with, and unfortunately, and I understand, obviously, it's been an incredible week for the folks at Hewlett Spencer with Mr. Spencer's family losing their home to fire. But one of the recommendations that we need your approval for, one of the things that's come out in walking through the science labs, our furnishings vendor made a recommendation that we thought would make for a better lab. Originally, the way this was designed was the contractor was providing all of the casework, which would be sinks and cabinets around the walls of these rooms, a teacher's station built in, but then the tables themselves, the lab tables, were being provided by the furniture vendor. There was some concern that matching things exactly, but we felt like we could get pretty close with that. As they went through, they were designing, they've laid out all the rooms, furniture, and everything free of charge as part of their service, providing that. But they recommended a change which we felt like was a much better layout for our science labs. Actually, in our chemistry lab, we felt like we were a little bit short. SSOE did offer an alternate, to add one more student at a table, but this actually provided more tables and more sinks in our room. And so we talked to Hewlett Spencer and Bell Construction, and they said, well, let's look to see let's look at who was going to provide the casework and our work, and let your vendor provide what they could do all of it for. And it came out that their provider could do it cheaper than our vendor could if we're going to make this change with all these lab tables. Now, so we went to our vendor and said, could we take this out of, it's cheaper if we go with them, could we take it out of your contract? Even though they'd already come up with the idea and layout, they agreed to do that. So what we're asking, and the cost, total amount of cost is $103,372. And what we're asking you to do is that was budgeted, you've approved paying that to Ernie Morris, which is the contract that you provided for furniture. And we would want to take that out, deduct that from Ernie Morris's contract and put that into Hewlett Spencer as an additional amount over and above what we agreed for the guaranteed maximum price. So there's no net effect to the budget. The overall budget stays the same. It's just moving it from one pocket to another. But to do that, because you've already approved those amounts, we would need for you to approve that change.
Okay. Other than that, I mean, you guys haven't run into any reason, this looks like a pretty clear-cut thing we need to go ahead and take
Pretty
care of.
clear-cut deal to us. I mean, it's just taking it, like I say, instead of the furniture vendor providing the original lab tables design, we went to the new layout, and we're changing it over with Hewlett Spencer.
Do any board members have any questions on that? Because otherwise, I'll go ahead and make a motion from the committee that we do take this item from the Ernie Morris Company and move it over to Hewlett Spencer Bell, and it's for a total change of 103, 372, I believe, is what's in here.
Yes, sir.
So I would go ahead and make that motion if anybody wants to second that. And we have a second. So any discussion on that one? If not, all in favor of making that change? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes, so thank you very much on that one. We did have, I think that was, looks like item 6 there.
Did I skip something? I don't have my
I started the
agenda.
trend, it's okay. I think we had another item there, and you know what, is item 5 there was architectural services for potential upcoming projects was the other one, discussion.
And I put that on the agenda because you asked me to, so that's your discussion, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry that I
appreciate
skipped
that.
ahead.
That's okay. Oh, you were already standing up there, so we went ahead and took care of that. On that issue, and I did ask to add this one, and I just want to, and this was mainly just as a discussion point for us as a board, and I didn't know what anyone else's thoughts were. I wanted to, being that we just had a report from SSOE that they think we will likely be building some facilities in the next few years, and I think all of our own discussions as a board, we had looked at that we'll probably be adding some facilities. I didn't know if we wanted to talk about that process, about if we wanted to go through a process of selecting an architectural firm to do that, or look at possibly other methods. If I'm not mistaken, and again, I said that Hewlett Spencer could leave. I believe they also offer some similar services under their umbrella, and again, Stan may have some information on that, but I believe they can offer some similar services where they can assist us with selecting an architect under their umbrella, if I do read that correctly.
And we had talked about them, being prepared to share some information about that. I know that they've recently worked with another school district where they are actually going to be building a new school, and they walked through almost started out with a request for qualification approach. It was narrowed down to 4 firms, and then they went and saw some of their work, formed a group made of, talking to Mr. Hewlett about that, made up of central office staff, some board members, and reviewed some of the work as part of choosing the final architect. He talked about that's a process they'd been involved in recently. He did mention there's other situations where they've been hired before the architect was hired and been involved in that process, but I don't have any more information than that.
Well, do any other board members have any discussion on that?
Yes.
Feel free. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Lindsay.
Let Mr. Penny go.
I think this is a subject that should be brought up at the Zoning and Facilities Committee meeting first, because if I remember right, I think SSOE's contract is up in June or July, and I know we were going to discuss that. So I think this is a subject that needs to be discussed at a full board Zoning and Facilities Committee meeting.
Mr. Lindsay?
Well, what I was going to say is kind of along the lines of that. Since we have such splendid attendance here tonight, I'm not sure that this is the best time to jump into this. And also with the director not being here, I know he has some input on what direction he'd like to see some things go, and would like to have some input on that. So as much as I hate to put things off, I think this might be a good time to put this off until we have a few more people to express their opinions. So.
Well, I can definitely understand that, and again, my intention in adding this was not to actually, I guess, come to a conclusion tonight. I really just wanted to get the discussion started. I know it's something we've talked about over the last year and a half, I guess, since I've been on here, I know we've talked about trying to have as much advance notice as these things as we can. And I just wanted to, again, start talking about this before we really have to talk about it. So at least maybe we can start narrowing down some ideas of what we're wanting to do. So if that's, go ahead, Mr. Lindsay.
Well, the only thing I add is maybe if Stan and Dave could spend some time in the next month, because I know you guys are sitting around, don't have anything to do, but if you could take some time to maybe come up with some options. And our delivery system for projects has been the same way for a long time, and I'm not saying that's wrong, but I'm saying this may be an opportunity for us to look at other options out there, and we may see something we like better, or we may realize that what we're doing is exactly what we want to be doing. But if you guys could just bring back some options of, I know there's some things out that maybe we want to look at hiring an architect just for a specific building program, and once that building program's done, then look at hiring another architect or the same architect for the next building program. But as it's been said from that 5-year report, it looks like that the school system will be very busy in the future. So I just think it'd be good if we could look at as many options as possible out there and have as much information as we go into this discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. And that was actually going to be my recommendation. Well, if you guys just for the next zoning and facilities meeting, if you could just kind of give us an idea of maybe what some different directions we can look at. And if part of that includes maybe having somebody like Hewlett Spencer talk to us about maybe what, if they fit into one of those models, something they could do, or if there's somebody else that maybe needs to speak to us about a different model we're not used to, or a different delivery system, maybe have them spend a few minutes to explain what maybe that kind of delivery system could offer to us as well. So if you could just have that for maybe the next meeting, and let me know if you can't. I know there's a lot on our plate right now, so if that's something we need to move further. Again, my goal was just to make sure we're not right up against any deadlines where we have to make decisions where we don't feel like we're making a very carefully weighted decision. So that meets my needs on that one. So we can switch back. We did have another one here, item 7. Which was the Spring Elementary roof, and I guess Dave is going to work with us on that one.
The first thing maybe is to turn to the pictures. This was kind of brought to my attention through Stan, I think through Mr. Dudley. I think he was up there on some other business with the church back there, and I think the aesthetics is what kind of caught his attention. I believe that's how this kind of started, and what we've looked at is obviously we've looked at the aesthetics, and we've kind of done some things to find out why we put this particular type of roof on and how effective it is. The study and the history that I've kind of done with some of the other roofers, this is a very effective type of roof. It's a PVC-based type of roof. It's very good. The challenge with it, as you can see, one is it's the aesthetics, the sun beats on the PVC, and it does some different fadings. Some of them in there, I think you might be able to see, or even if you drive by, there may look like there's striping in there. And we think that the conclusion we came up with is the striping was done by repairs, and over the years that may have been a different batch of coloring, and so it was affected by the UVs a little bit differently, and that's why that was like that, or the result came from that. The second picture, I think, that is in your packet is kind of a black-looking roof, and it's not a mold. It's just tree junk. It's just debris. It's just stuff, and because it's kind of a PVC material, it's not as, let's say, the surface tension may not be as slick as what you'd have on a metal roof, so things kind of adhere to it a little bit better. We're looking at different things or methods to be able to clean that. To do that, you've kind of got to go back to the manufacturer to have them approve certain things. They're very picky on what you can and can't do, and even methods of repair. And as a matter of fact, that's the other thing that, let's say the downside to this is repairs. You just can't go up there and slap a bunch of silicone or your black, mastic or your Henrys or stuff like that you may do at your house. because it's a PVC system, it's a unique method of a combination of heating it, the chemical application, and it's almost an art to do this. And you have to actually have certain, the manufacturer requires certain training for the people to do the repairs. I actually have called them, the Sarnafil company who manufactures this, and the company who installed it is the Peach State Roofing, who's done roofs for us, who did the downspout and the gutter stuff at Spring Hill High School. They're supposed to be contacting me to go out there and take a look at it. So I think if you look at these last two pictures, actually the way that they're, if you see the white on the bottom, it may be kind of confusing to see which way the beams are supposed to go, but if you see the light on the bottom, you can see the stains coming down through the roof, and as we were up there looking at it, there's a couple of little pinholes that we're going to have looked at and addressed. And I mean, even my question was, how could these little pinholes create so much water coming through there? And these are still pretty active, and one of the things that they mentioned, if you have a negative pressure in a building, it can just suck it through there. And I said, well, how do you create the negative pressure? A lot of them come from the hoods in your kitchen. You know, any exhaust fan that's sucking it out, it's got to come from somewhere. So that's probably where the majority of this stuff comes from. So we are looking at getting those repairs, and it is under warranty. It was put in 2008, and it's a 20-year warranty, so that should be repaired. The aesthetics we'll ask and deal with that as the time comes.
Okay, good. Because I know that was my question, was about the warranty, because
Yeah.
I believe I had learned that there should have been. Okay, that's good to know that that's, and then, you know, obviously the wood staining, that's something we would just have to address once we're making sure that the leaks are taken care of. And you guys are working on the visual part, the kind of the black, dark,
Yeah,
some
we're going to
cleaning-
ask them what
cleaning
can be
methods.
done.
Okay.
And if it's something that we can do, you know, with our maintenance department, or if it's something that they require, that they have to do with a certain amount of pressure rating or pressure washer or something that doesn't, you know, blast through the membrane.
But the summary here is that you feel like these are things that we can be
Yes.
addressed. There's no major issue other than they just need to be taken care of properly, and we can move on with this then. Mr. Lindsay?
This material, you mentioned the word membrane. Is it some type of membrane roofing as well, or how is it applied?
Yeah, I think, and is Dwayne still here? Yeah, I think as this was evaluated, we were able to save, SSOE recommended this as a savings. We saved because we did not have to take the old metal roof off. There's the little, what they call the little standing seams, you know, on most of the metal roofs. So we were able to put a foam board in there to kind of to take up that gap from the standing seam to the bottom. So then they were able to go and just roll this mat out. And then these little ribs that are in there, they're just for aesthetics. They're just a bonded rib in there. So it's really just a flat PVC mat that's rolled down over it. They've got this mechanism that bonds the laps together. So I don't know if that answered your question, but.
It does, and I hate to say the same thing over and over, but I've been saying it for 3.5 years now. This is a whole other reason why I hate flat roofs and I hate membrane roofs. And I know the argument, well, we got a 20-year warranty, but the roof failed in 8 years, and there's proof of that here. And you know, sometimes it's hard to bite the bullet to go in another direction, but you know, looking down the road, it may be worth it rather than having to deal with some of these issues. And so I just want to.
I'd probably just want to clarify that the roofer that we did take up there was the roofer that's doing the repairs at Spring Hill High School. I've got a lot of confidence with him, and he said this roof has not failed. I mean, you look at any roof, I mean, even a shake shingle roof, wind comes up, you're going to have issues where there are repairs that are needed. The two little pinholes that we saw, which is amazing that it creates that much, there's things that are always going to happen. I mean, even just look at the metal roof at Spring Hill High School. It needs repairs, but it can be repaired. So I think this is it hasn't been a failed roof, or the roof hasn't failed, it just needs some repair.
Okay. Well, I think too, it probably looks like we probably should have caught this a little sooner and maybe done something about it a little sooner. It looks like it's been going on for a little while from the staining, even if especially if they are pinholes. I know it can kind of weep out and get larger, but it looks like it's been going on for a while, so maybe we should have maybe had this discussion sooner, but, you know, it is what it is. So I guess, it sounds like you have it under control, and again, if there's anything else we need to do on that, please let us know.
Okay.
So we can make sure and take care of it.
Hopefully by next month, we'll have a repair report and it comes out good.
Good. Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Any other questions on that, on item 7? Otherwise, we can move to item number 8 here, the concession stand, restroom, Central High School baseball field. And Stan?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Let me give just a little background, and I tried to do that in the memo that we gave you as to why this is on the agenda. We were contacted last week, first of the week. As I told you, that seems like a long time ago. But last week about a question about the possibility of where we stood in the process of adding a concession stand, restroom, possibly even press box at the softball, baseball facility at Columbia Central High School. To give you just a little more background on that, as you know, in the past, our school district has not been very involved in athletic facilities. There's been a past approach that those were left up to booster clubs and local support. And so the baseball field and softball field at Central High School was developed entirely with booster club and volunteer support. Now, last year you did fund, and we added lighting to the baseball field, but those fields have existed without a restroom facility because they're away from the school, and so typically they bring in porta potties for the games. I was contacted not by anybody at the school, but as you see, a representative from the county commission, just saying, wanting to know where we were on that project. I shared with them that there really wasn't a project. We really don't have anything. Former director of schools had kind of put together a little list to say when we get through with Central High School, if there's any money left over, I'd like to see us address some athletic needs at the school, and this is one of them. We don't have a plan. We don't have a budget. We'd thrown a guesstimate figure out at $100,000 if we thought we were starting down the path. But, so I gave him that information, so I'd like to see us look at that further. I tried last week, between that time and the time we were getting your packet posted, to try to do some research. Got online, I think while I was sitting here during one of your all's meetings last week, and looked through some things and found several companies who build pre-manufactured facilities. One of them caught my attention because even though the company was based in Nevada, one of their manufacturing facilities was in Columbia, Tennessee. And so I called them, and they said, well, I can send you just some preliminary information. I put in a picture of a facility they built, which is probably much larger than what we need. But in conversations with him, it still looked like to meet the needs that we would need for restrooms and that kind of facility, you're still looking at $200,000 plus with them. And I'll just tell you here, because maybe somebody in the room knows, he says the local manufacturer company they subcontract with is a company called Blazer. I haven't been able to find them anywhere. He wouldn't give me their phone number because he didn't want me to go directly and deal with them. So if you know that company, maybe they can do something for us better. But he said, and I told him we were talking about a tournament in May, and he said, boy, that's a very aggressive thing. We currently have a 120-day backlog. I also called our architects, SSOE. You see in there, Mr. Hibden quickly found a layout of something they'd built, I think, somewhere else, and said, here's a preliminary. It's just a floor plan. He gave a little bit of suggestion on that. He said probably something like this is in the neighborhood of $150,000, depending on what you got to do to run utilities and those kind of things. I also talked with Hewlett Spencer and Mr. Bargatze with them said, I think we've built some things like this in the past that I could get you some plans, but they haven't been able to get anything to us yet. So the other thing that when I was contacted said that, there's some supporters who would really like to see this ready by and I made one typo in this. It's not the regional baseball tournament, it's the district baseball tournament. in May. I think it's May the 4th is when that begins. We have some supporters who would be able to donate to see that happen. They raised, I think the way he said it specifically was raise the funds to see that happen. So I said, well, if they want to come and speak to the board, we don't have any money earmarked for that. I'm sure the board would be interested if somebody has funding for that. Also, Mr. White and the baseball coach, Coach Pickle, are here from the Central High School. They might be able to speak. I will tell you, they didn't bring this to us, so this was not something that came from the school or the baseball team. It's just from supporters who inquired about it. So that's why we put it on the agenda.
Okay, well, thank you, Stan. Anybody have anything they want to discuss on that? Mr. Lindsay?
I will. I don't, there may be some people, I don't know if Mr. Shackford wants to speak to this, if it's kosher with you guys, if we could allow him to speak, and maybe some more, if there's some more here that'd like to speak.
I mean, I know we're dragging out a little long, but if they could just, be brief and I guess to the point, especially I would be interested in hearing anything about any funds that could be raised to cover some of the costs.
Thank you. Are you the acting chair tonight, or?
I would actually be the chair of this committee.
The chair.
It's mine.
The chair of the committee. Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight, other board members. We have been, this was instituted really by, I think, supporters of Central High baseball facility. You've really got first time I've been up there today. I don't know if you've ever been up there, but you got a $1 million facility you got no money in, except for the lighting. And I know they appreciate that. And that's going to expand the usage of that property, which makes it all the more, I think, important that the board considering funding this request. And, as we have stepped out, we look at what we're spending down the hill. So, and then to have a spectacular baseball field there without any facilities, and I wouldn't consider porta potties and a used Coke trailer as adequate or safe and sanitary facilities. I'd just like the board to consider that now, as far as. And I think other people can speak to this, maybe, but I am supportive of what they're asking for here. Now, where to pay for it? Well, there's a lot of places you can pay for it, but we just got our sales tax report, which you probably hadn't got yet, but December was very good to the school board. So if you want the exact numbers, there's an additional $131,729 over and above what you did a year prior. Of course, you didn't even budget that much. So, so where is that going to end up? It's going to end up in fund balance. So the fund balance is going to continue to grow, and I think what the commission did this year with your fund, with basically, the funding that we gave you, is we gave you what you had last year, but that with an increased penny rate, if you understand that. And then you ask for more money as well. So you just really ask for money that you're going to get through sales tax, combination of sales tax and property tax. So I want to grind over the numbers, but, I think, we do have they have landed a district tournament, and I think this is an important time to try to make a good faith effort to Central and its supporters, the baseball and girls softball community. Those fields are right there side by side. So, of course, I understand funding is up to the board and approval by the county commission if it's coming out of your fund balance. So I understand that completely, but I will say that since I've been on the board 5 years, I can't really remember county commission turning you down once it comes through your board, ever. So this is something I would like to see, just like, you know, when you brought me a school in April that I had no funding for, and I stepped out on a limb, and, you know, we voted to pass that and went to market, got a bond, borrowed the money without the funding. $46.5 million without funding. So, what I've heard tonight, we got a wonderful team working on that. That's going great. And we've, you know, I think people are very proud of what's going on there. And I think this is just an extension of that. We don't need to spend the kind of money we're spending and ask guests to go to porta potties and be served out of a, you know, really a utility trailer. I think we're better than that. I think this county has proven it can step its game up, and I appreciate what the board has done in enabling the school system to do that, and I'm continually supportive of what the board pushes out. I know we're excited about what's going on with the school, but Board Member Lindsay, he may have an idea of how to do this. I just know I don't have a fund balance report for you, so and I noticed the financial lady. She's not here tonight. Dr. Alice is not here, so I would call up the people that's already given you $1 million field up there to encourage you to do what I'm asking you to do. So I'll leave it at that, and if there's anybody else who wants to speak to it, I'd like to hear from them. Unless you have some questions for me, Mr. Chairman.
I don't, Commissioner Shackelford, I appreciate you speaking on this tonight. And we may have some other people step up in just a minute if you don't mind, but Mr. Pennings, did you have something you wanted to
I just
comment
want to
to?
say, I agree with Mr. Shackelford. I mean, we're building $42 million high school there, and you go up and to a softball or baseball game and have to go to a porta potty. I'm not sure tonight anything will get done. We have to have the plans and everything first, but I think it should be done, and I totally agree with you.
Thank you, Mr. Pennings.
Oh, Kristen.
Mr. Shackelford, I know you mentioned that this field could, if we were able to add these type of facilities, this would obviously be something that would be an enhancement, not only to the school, but potentially for the county to be used. As a commissioner, do you see, you know, the potential down the road for it to be used for other events or things like that, but outside of the school use, that would be a benefit to the county?
Well, of course, any outside use of your school facilities has to come through this body, doesn't it?
It does, but I think we've been pretty generous with letting,
Yeah.
I mean, Mule Day, whatnot. So I think we've been pretty
you
generous
have to worry about me
about
picking
that.
up a bat, but, you know, you can, you know, Mr. Pickle he's the coach and kind of over the field up there.
Coach Pickle has several tournaments actually during the summer.
Okay.
Himself, and, you know, there are softball tournaments galore in Murray County now with the new
Ridley
fields
Park.
and so forth. So some of those games could possibly be played up there, yes. So you
That
can
could
have-
generate some revenue that way.
Of course,
Okay.
yes, for sure.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good. And one other thing that was mentioned was that our previous director maybe had made some promises. I know we have a new director. I'm just wondering if those promises have been expressed to our current director and everybody's on board with what the promises have been. I think this is a great thing, and I don't want to discourage this, but at the same time, I don't know that $200,000 facility can be built in 3 months. And I hope it can, and I hope that we can get this, you know, get all the plans together and whatnot. But at the same time, I hate to hear that somebody's promised something and then we're sitting up here to try to figure out how to cover somebody's promise that's not even here anymore. That's a little disconcerting to me, and I just want to make sure all the athletic facilities at Central get looked at. Maybe not now, but, you know, we are going to have $46 million brand-new high school, and we need to have athletic facilities that, are commensurate with what we're spending for that and are reflective of, the outstanding programs that we do have athletic-wise at Central. So I just hope that this is going to start the conversation. And this is not the end of the conversation, and it's not simply focused on baseball and softball, but for everything that we've got going on extracurricular-wise at Central. I know it's going to be kind of a headache probably for the next couple of years on band rooms and whatnot. So I just hope we have all that stuff figured out.
Go ahead, Mr. Beaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I agree with Mr. Shackelford. We got a very nice field, and I think that we need the facilities to go with it. It's kind of embarrassing, like Mr. Shackelford commented on about asking even our own citizens to use a porta potty. And so, I think we should look at this, this being the first step, and see what we can come up with, agree on, and let's move on it.
Mr. Pennings?
This is the project we have to move on, I totally agree, but we are woefully behind in doing anything for athletic fields anywhere in this county. I mean, we're way behind on everything. I think the bleachers at Spring Hill, at Mount Pleasant were one. We just had to do the press box at Spring Hill. Money well spent, and we are way behind in keeping up with our athletics and our athletic fields in this county.
Real quick, if I ask a question on that. Stan, on the assessment we're having done, am I correct, they are looking at sports facilities as well?
They are, I can't.
Okay.
Too many of those on, but anyway, they are. Central High School was not included in the assessment because we're building a new school, but we have asked them to look at the athletic facilities at Central High School.
Okay.
And they've agreed to do that. They haven't done that yet, but we did ask them. That was kind of tagged on as a favor for us, but they haven't agreed.
Carrie?
I've actually spent some time this week calling around asking, trying to put some of these pieces together to find out some history, along with the current request. And I am glad to hear that Central's athletic facilities are going to be assessed, because I felt like there was a gap. To have a really nice baseball field with no facilities that's very lacking. And my feeling on this is that as a mom who, my kids are now in a functional age, but we are quite an avid sports family. So there are many days that we have devoted to a sporting event of whatever sport. But if I came to this great field and had no facilities and 3 little kids, I assure you I would have nothing good to say about that day if I was having to run to the Quick Mart up the street or to go to, if it was a hot day, a Porta John with 3 little kids. So let's just do this well, and let's do it now. Apparently, we've already committed to a tournament from what I understand. So the timing of this is not great, but it's just a sign of overlooked sports facilities for so many years. In the grand scheme of our budget, I feel like we're doing quite well. Our fund balance is healthy. We've got some unexpected positives, it sounds like, from what Mr. Shackelford just told us. This is doable. I heard Mr. Hewlett, I believe, kind of step up and say, we're here if you need us. Well, guess what? We kind of need something right now. And I'd like to see us all pull together, find a way to get this done and to be done well. I think we're going to have people come into Murray County for this district tournament, and I think they should leave with positive things to say. I think this is doable. It'll be a scramble, but I think it is doable.
Mr. Lindsay?
I just want to echo what Mr. Pennings and Ms. Powers said. For far too long, we as a county, we as a school system set athletics to the side. And there are certain things we can't ask booster clubs to do. We can ask a booster club to, if Coach Creech wants to carry his softball girls and play in a tournament in Panama City during spring break, then I think we can ask that booster club, you guys raise the money to pay for the hotel rooms. But we can't, there's certain things that you have to have if we're going to participate in athletics. And obviously, bathroom, concession, and press box are one of them. But, looking at this week, I kind of came up with some ideas about if we could get this done by May 4th. And I actually called Mr. Bargatsky today and asked him this question, that if we could turn this over to Hewlett Spencer, could this happen by May 4th? He said he thought it could, and he was kind of speaking for you, Dwayne. But my idea was if we could do a change order on the central project and add this to the scope of work and add whatever the cost is to the GMP, then we don't have to go through the bid process. We don't have to jump a lot of hurdles. We already have, because I see the cars every day, 90 or 100 contractors over there working every day. So we already have the people on site to do it. We have Hewlett Spencer that can oversee that. We have SSOE that can draw it. So, Jake, do you see any problem if we were to do that?
No, I mean, obviously the full board's gonna have to vote on that, but no, I don't see a problem with you getting that started to do it, the board wants to take that direction.
And my request would be that, as Kerry said and as Commissioner Shackford said, I think our fund balance, and I'm going to use some round numbers, but we could spend $5 million right now and not touch our 3%, that 3% threshold. Now, we know this facilities audit's coming in, and we know we're going to have some money to spend, but we also know that we're fixing to put more money back into fund balance come June because, thankfully, times are good in Murray County now. No matter what anybody says, our sales tax are good, property tax are good, and things are happening. So, I would suggest that we ask SSOE to move forward with this, and we plan on taking the money out of fund balance, not going to commission and asking to add to the bond or anything, but us take that money out of fund balance, and we could pay for that without having to borrow that money. Now, I'm sitting here speaking for you, Dwayne. What's your opinion? If we could turn you loose, we have a board meeting in 2 weeks. If we could tell you at that board meeting in 2 weeks, take off with this, I mean, I would guess that this is a 60-day construction project, so that would give you guys a month. Could you turn this around and get this to Hewlett Spencer within a month?
I'm just talking open, okay? You've got a board meeting, you've got 6 of you here, that's what it would take to pass it at the board. Is that
Right.
in agreement? I mean, if you say that you 6 will vote for it, on the upcoming board meeting, we could start Monday. And I think you're going to have to do some aggressive things like that if you're remotely going to get this thing built. And I think doing a change order to Hewlett Spencer and Bell while they got there, I think that's an excellent idea. I think that's about the only way you're going to get it done. Otherwise, I mean, you can negotiate the fees. Biggest thing we need is a little bit of guidance. Is this going to be a bare bones facility, or is it going to be designed to tie in with the overall new school? We're going to keep the brick and match the thing. And, so we got some key questions that we need answered. That's through Stan and Dave, or, bare bones, no brick. You might be able to get this thing 150,000. You add the brick, you may be up 200,000. Depending on where utilities are and whether you've got enough surplus when you added the ball field lights and wherever you got to run plumbing to. I mean, you could be up more, but, I mean, you're not looking at a lot of cost to get it designed, because our contracts with you, 5 or 6%, depending on how it's viewed. And if let's say we're 200,000 and 5%, that's $10,000. So I'm just saying, we'll do what we can do to help this thing, and I'm willing to go tell, hey, we need to get started Monday, if that's the direction that the board, I got some sort of confidence that it's going to move forward.
I picture it, and this is just me talking, but I picture this being a split-face block building with a metal roof. And looking at the design, and I know you guys used the number 500. I think that came from Stan and then from Mr. White. But looking at the code and thinking about other facilities, I think we could use a number of 200 because there's minimum amount of permanent seating there. So I think that the building and zoning office will let you play with those numbers a little bit. And I think we could cut that in half. I think 7 toilets on the women's side is overkill. Because most baseball and softball games, we got less than 100 people there probably. So I think we could cut it down to maybe half that. They're not as much as some people would like. I don't think they're going to be grilling any steaks in there or anything like that. So, it's just a place to warm up food and keep it warm. But, I hate to use the word bare bones, but I think that I didn't foresee brick and don't foresee brick, but because the block kind of ties into everything else up there. But if that and I had your idea, and I know we would be walking a little bit fast, but if 6 of us vote tonight to do it, then that would give you a 2-week head start with you having the idea that none of us are going to back up on that. But with all that being said, I'll also make a motion that we offer to the full board a change order and I'm going to use a figure $150,000 and let Mr. Hibden get started on that, and maybe in 2 weeks you can have a better idea of the dollar figure. If 150 won't work, if it takes 175, then maybe in a couple weeks you could let us know that, whereas the full board when we vote on it. But I'll make the motion that we pass a change order for $150,000 along to Hewlett Spencer for construction of a bathroom, concession, and the possibility of a press box on top. But the more you guys look into it, the more we'll know. But
Okay, we need to know if there's a press box involved day one. In other words, are we designing just a restroom facility with concessions? And like I say, we have not built this. This is a plan we pulled together based on the number of restrooms. We've built and designed other concession buildings, but we were told 500 people, like you said. If you can tell us, bottom line, we're doing some programming right here in this meeting. Are we going to scale that back to 300, or we need some guidance on what is the real number that needs to be designed, because that goes in on the documents submitted to code for, approval. Now, I mentioned in the memo, it's my understanding this would not have to go to State Fire Marshal. It's not a facility that you use for curriculum. Now, it has to go to them and say it's a no review, but that's, we don't have a month to 6 weeks to get in their queue to get it reviewed. So I think that'll be pretty quick, but I'm just saying, I'm hoping we got enough survey information, but it may be we have to go hire a little additional survey information to make sure we can set the elevations and know where the utilities are. It may be we go, or we would recommend we'd go get a couple of borings from a geotechnical engineer. We'd probably use PSI since they've seemed to save some money. But, we can fast track this thing, and we do things like that every day. But,
I guess, I'm making the motion, but if the motion would be better to turn you loose, and if you could give us an answer, like, a roundabout figure in 2 weeks, I would, to me, it would make sense to add a press box while we're doing it. But if that press box turns this from a $150,000 project to a $300,000 project, that may make a difference, which I don't think it would. But I'm just, for instance.
I mean, and I'm getting off subject, I apologize, but we're talking about speeding this along. You can't use contingent money, so you're talking about pulling money from fund balance, and that would have to go back to the county. So, I mean, I know we're talking about moving things along quickly, but that request would have to go back to the county to be approved before we have the funds for that. So I don't know how quickly that would take place. I don't know if they'd agree to it or not. I think they would, based on what Mr. Shackford was saying. But, you know, that's gonna be a significant delay if we're talking about moving quickly.
Well, I guess my thinking, I'm willing to take a $7,500 risk that they're gonna vote with us if we pass it. I mean, because we wouldn't break ground, I wouldn't think, before, because it would go to county commission in February. So we would know by the end of February, so we wouldn't break ground, so I'd be willing to take that risk, but I'll throw it out there that I make a motion, we at least get started on it.
If you, just one second, Dwayne, Mr. Lindsey, if I could I'm just trying to clarify what the motion is before we go too much further on that.
I don't know why, I only said about 14
I
different
know.
things.
I tried to take notes. I guess I'm still hung, and I think the first part of it made sense, a motion to move to full board, a change order at $150,000. That's just a starting point of understanding. And to request that SSOE start researching immediately the actual cost of a, and this, I guess this is where I'm going to be hung up too, is do we want them to move ahead with the press box or not, I guess. I think that sounds like a pretty big variable is what he's thinking it may be cost-wise. Or do we want him to
Well, I think.
research it all and give us the
Yeah,
two
research it all and
options?
then give us both options.
We can do that. It's just adding the press box, you know, it's elevated structure. It has potential to double the cost,
They've got to load it.
or get to the 300,000.
But let's just look at both options. It'd be easy to cut it off if we can't do it, so.
Yeah.
I think Mr. Breeden wants to speak.
Did that motion include taking
Just so there's nothing else is there anything else, any bases we would need to cover as well? I know it's getting kind of,
If the committee approves this and for some reason the full board doesn't, then I guess we're gonna have to pass the hat. So, you know, there's 6 of you, and I understand that, it's unanimous, but, Mr. Hibben's talking about starting immediately. That's the only thing that concerns me a little bit, that, if you guys are committed to go forward.
well, Wayne, if you don't mind me interjecting, I'll just go ahead and say right now, I'm opposed to starting right now on this, and I'll just explain why. I think this is something we need to look at. I think it's definitely something we need to do. I'm a little concerned about, you know, I know that Mr. Lindsey had mentioned about just his idea was a block building. Again, I don't know if that's the best option. Maybe it does need to be more architecturally similar to the rest of the facility we're building. If we're doing this, I mean, again, we several people have mentioned talking about doing it right. I feel like we're rushing into something just to meet a certain date, when maybe we could get a better product if maybe we don't meet that date, but maybe we get a better product that's actually in the long run a better building. I don't like the idea of trying to rush this through. We've got some questions on even the process here as far as the committee doing this. We're not really sure what any costs are going to be. We're all taking kind of guesses at this. You know, the 150 could, as Dwayne was just saying, if we end up going with the 2-story structure, could easily turn into $300,000, $400,000. It sounds like it could very easily turn into that. And again, depending on how we dress it up, it could go higher than that. That's what I'm kind of hearing. And maybe that's what we want, and I'm okay with that. But again, we've also got this facilities report that's coming back that we're about to start, you know, that's why I asked, you know, that the sporting facilities are included in that. And we're going to start, hopefully, and again, we've been deficient in that in the past. Hopefully, we're going to start including those in as normal facilities, and we need to look at this in a measured way rather than just trying to get this through because we do have a tournament. I'm still questionable about we can get this done. I know people are gonna, and I understand that Dwayne obviously has a reason. He would love to say that we can get this done. I would, if it was my business, I would say I can get it done too, and then really scramble to figure out how I can get it done. But the May 4th date sounds pretty tough, and it sounds like.
That's what I'm saying. You gotta start almost immediately. If you
Sure.
got any shot at making that. But being able to work with you and Spencer and Bell Construction, we can get actual costs back to you. And I feel fairly confident, I'm speaking for them now, that they'll help on pulling prices together.
Okay.
But I'm not this.
No, I appreciate that. But again, I want to make sure we're doing this right if we're going to do it. And it's starting to look like a very rushed, put-together thing, and we don't even have an idea of what we want yet. And we're sitting here looking about spending quite a bit of money. And on top of that, again, quite a few, obviously, the rest of the board members could have been here tonight if they could, but we also don't have the director here. And I don't know how this plays into some of the costs that, again, there's a big variable here. We're about to get into budget season. We're about to look at the cost of some of what we've all been asking for. We've got the keys that were just rolled out. There's going to be some cost involved with that. There's going to be costs with some of the other academic programs we want. And I'm really concerned that we're making some cost decisions that these may be textbooks we're talking about spending. Realistically, this is money that may be spent on something else. So that's kind of where I stand on it. Again, but I say all that to say that I'm still okay. I would like us to explore it, and I think I've talked to several people about it, that I want to look into it. I'm really uncomfortable about rushing ahead when we don't know what the product we actually want is. We don't know what it's going to cost. We have no idea, but we just decided we want it. That makes me very nervous, and especially on a rush timeline. So if it were, I would, again, depending on how obviously the vote can go however it was on the motion, which hasn't even been seconded yet. But I would like to definitely look into this, but I'd like to get some more information before we jump too far ahead. But that would be my personal opinion on that. Mr. Phoenix?
Well, like I said before, we need the facility, but as a committee, all we can do is bring it to the full board that as a committee, we recommend looking into this project up to, say, $200,000 or whatever figure you want to put on it. But you can't make any decision tonight to spend any money on it because we're just a committee and it's got to go to the full board first. Now, if somebody would like to get some drawings together on their own and bring them, I don't have anything against that.
Ms. Parker?
I was just wondering what the plan is with the tournament as it is now. And if we are not able to get a building in place, what was the plan when we agreed to it?
It's always been, be porta potties in the trailer.
Okay.
We won't turn down the tournament because it's nice to host and it's nice to stay at home and have people come there. So, because it's a beautiful field, but, well, we're gonna have the tournament.
Okay. I mean, is there anything we could do to make the porta potties nicer or any of that stuff if we're not gonna be able to make?
They're cleaned out every Tuesday unless you wanna pay for more, to have up there, but that's about it. Unless we find something fancier restroom wise, that I've seen soccer tournaments, big time soccer tournaments roll in big
Trailers.
for stuff like that, but, that's costly, I'm sure.
If I could piggyback on that, is that something we could look at least have an idea? Again, if this doesn't happen or whether it does, it'd be nice to know what the cost like that would be. Again, it's kind of a shame that we do have porta potties up there, and maybe there are some other options if, again, whether this is passed and it isn't done in time, or even if it doesn't get passed, or we just decide to do it at a different time, I think having some other options would be nice to know, because again, porta potties, especially when it's gets warmer, can get kind of.
Had many tournaments up there with porta potties, but.
Well, and based on what Mr. Lindsay said, he mentioned that, the concession stand, he didn't envision it being much we're not preparing steaks, I think was what you said. So, I mean, I don't know what all is cooked at the baseball field, but I mean, is it going to need more than the Pepsi trailer that is there now? And
They have a grill to fix hamburgers and hot dogs, and they order pizza and things like that.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
football food,
Right.
ballpark food. No, there won't be any steaks grilled, I don't think. Unless they wanted to grill some ribeye, and make ribeye sandwiches, then, that's a possibility.
Well, I think that's part of what it may be input from the baseball parents that are here, but I would really just like to hear what exactly y'all would like this facility to look like, because we're not gonna have a chance to spend $200,000 or $300,000 going, another, in 2 years. I don't think we're gonna spend 200,000 and spend another 200,000. So I personally, I do want it to be done right, so I would really like to know, what do y'all want it to include? Do you want it to include concessions? Do you want it to include, enough, enough bathroom facilities for 500, or should we cut it down to 300, or press box? That's really where I think we need some guidance from y'all as to what you really need in order for it to really meet your needs going forward.
The big thing with serving food, the big thing with serving food is just safety. I mean, nobody has a place to wash their hands. If our workers are in the concession stand, have to go to the bathroom and then come back, we literally have nowhere to wash our hands. And that's, being married to the health department person in this area, I mean, I catch that from my wife all the time, trust me. She deals with it every day. So it's that's the biggest thing to me, is the safety part of it. As far as what we want or what we need, I mean, it's, like Mr. Lindsay said, it's not, we need a shell, and we can put refrigerators in it. We can put, things to heat food and keep it in temperature in there, build counters or whatever. But it's just, we're not looking for a grill, inside grill or anything like that. It's basically, a block building with men's and women's restrooms with a, service window for a concession stand on either side. That's about all we're looking for. So it's not, not anything elaborate, I don't think. I mean, does that answer your question? Does that give you a better idea?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask you a question point blank because you said it. You're not going to vote for this tonight. You're not going to vote for the motion I made.
No.
Okay. And since you didn't get a second, I'll go ahead and withdraw my motion. But I think we got to move forward. And as Dwayne said, to get Dwayne started. Now I know me throwing a dollar figure out, probably not the smartest thing in the world, but for Dwayne to get started, it only cost us $5,000 for every $100,000 that they say it cost. So we know that we're going to do, or it appears that we know we're going to do this. We just don't know how we're going to do it and what product we want yet, is what I gather. And I'm making some assumptions, but with that being said, why not we get Dwayne started? Why not we make a motion that, we don't have to go as far, I don't have to carry the motion as far as doing the change order and all that, but get Dwayne started, looking into it and him bringing us back some preliminary figures. And as he said, maybe he can get with Hewlett Spencer in the next couple of weeks. Maybe we can have more information in 2 weeks. Maybe a more solid figure, and it's not me pulling that figure out of my pocket like I just did, but so I'll make the motion that we just ask SSOE to get started on the design of bathrooms, concession, possibly press box. Just give us both options, and of course that'll go before the board in 2 weeks, and hopefully, I mean, again, I'm kind of begging here, Dwayne, but if the more information we could have in 2 weeks, I think the better decision we can make. And you need to get a second on that.
So we have a motion and a second, and let me make sure I get that correct. Just in general for SSOE to get started on, based on some direction of what we're kind of giving them, and be able to bring something to the full board meeting? Is that where that's what the motion is? Okay. Ms. Powers?
Okay, I have a question. Is there one porta-john or more than one porta-john?
There's two, maybe sometimes
This is the
three,
zoning
four
facilities.
at the most.
Yeah.
Okay.
That we have to pay for. We would
Okay.
probably bring in more for a bigger tournament. We could,
Yes,
yeah.
I agree.
We'll just have to pay for it.
Okay, well, I like all the facts on the table to make decisions.
Yes, ma'am.
Believe it or not, I do consider myself a porta-john expert. So I was over the facilities committee of the polk ball. So I actually have researched a lot of porta johns, and especially when you start talking about that 18-wheeler that has those really nice ones. Okay, you were talking about a huge expense, and porta johns are not cheap. So, you know, if we do not do this by May, let's just, whose budget does that come out of? Your athletics budget?
Athletic budget.
Okay, well, that's a separate issue than our budget, but it is a sizable expense. So if we're committed to this tournament, we need to have facilities, the money's gonna come from somewhere. I did not know you were married to the health department, but as someone who has a nutrition and food science degree as my bachelor, it has been brought to my attention that y'all cook hamburgers and such, and there's no running water. That makes my skin crawl. This needs to be addressed. This needs to be addressed quickly. And if you are talking about a tournament, I mean, I think we are setting ourselves up. If we are committed to this tournament and we do not have adequate facilities, I don't think we're putting ourselves in a good position. And additionally, I feel like a lot of people have sat here for now 2.5 hours, and I think I would assume that this idea originated with some of these people who cared enough to sit this long. I would like to hear from them. I mean, we're tossing out ideas of what we would like. Does it need to be brick? I am a little bit familiar with these facilities. I don't think you can see where these are going to be from the front of the road. So aesthetics, I do like quality aesthetics, but in this case, I would like to hear from them what they envision. I mean, if they cared enough to bring this topic up, let's hear what would make this come to fruition, you know, kind of this desire to fruition. I would really like to hear from some of these other people, you know, if we could, Mr. Chairman.
If I could on that too, I guess and I'm not trying to not get their input, and I do appreciate they've been here tonight. The concern I have is that I'm not sure sitting here for the next 20 minutes trying to figure out the best design for a building is maybe the best idea. And again, that's where I start wondering if this is being a little rushed. What I would like to see is those concerned people that really want to see it be able to get their ideas down of what they're actually looking for rather than kind of hashing it out immediately tonight. Again, we may have some different opinions on what they want. You're saying, I guess, that they're cooking hamburgers. I would probably lean towards a little, to actually have if we're going to do this again, if you're going to have a cooking surface in there, to have the real kind of concession area rather than just a bare bones. And I don't want to sacrifice that. I wouldn't want to sacrifice the facility just to try to get something in there in time. Would be my preference. So I guess my point on that is I don't know if there's a way that the people that have an interest in this would like to kind of get together an idea of what they're actually looking for.
Could just one of us speak? Because I'm going to speak for the entire baseball contingent.
Well, I guess that would be
If
easy
you'll
enough
let
then.
me.
Sure.
You don't have to listen to a whole stream of people, but
Yes,
my
sir.
name is Mike Short, and my wife Teresa is an educator at Withorn Middle School, and we've been in the community for 23 years. 2 sons have already graduated from Central High School and moved on, and I have one left. He's a 18-year-old senior this year, graduates in May, plays baseball, and we've been blessed and fortunate to have 2 children go through Coach Pickle's baseball program. And for the last probably 12 years of our lives, we spent many days and many nights up at that baseball field. And I you know, you asked for a parent perspective, so I kind of want to give you that, and just to let you know where we're coming from. And first of all, you don't have to travel very far to get an upgrade on porta potties. So when you're talking about building design and how, you know, architecturally significant it needs to be and what it needs to look like, we're talking about a block building that can have a women's and men's restroom where our ladies don't have to walk 100 yards through a muddy gravel road to get to a single porta potty, and then sanitize their hands with sanitizer. I mean, it's ridiculous. So that part of it. But, you know, every year we watch parents and kids come up that ramp and look over at seriously dilapidated looking, embarrassing tennis courts that have been like that for my whole 15 years. And then they look to the right and see this gorgeous baseball field that Coach Pickle has created with a lot of help and not a lot of money. And it is probably the finest baseball playing surface, certainly in the mid-state, probably in the state. And every one of those players and parents, as they walk up that ramp and see it, say that, "Oh my gosh, look at that field." And they walk a little bit farther and then they ask, "Where are the concessions and where are your restrooms?" And we say the trailer that Coach Pickle wrangled, I don't know how he even got it, how many years ago, that we turned into a concession stand, and then the porta potties, you know, 100 yards down the road. And
And it's gravel, and it's mud, and it's rutted, and we have people with disabilities, and we have wheelchairs, and we have walkers and canes. And we ask those folks to hoof it down the road to the Porta-John. That's embarrassing. And we're not doing this because it's embarrassing. My son's going to graduate. My kids are gone. My dog in the fight has left the fight. But I really care about our school system, and I care about our kids. And you won't find a harder working bunch of people than the softball and baseball parents. We do it all. Coach Pickle doesn't ask anyone for money. He just says, we need your help, and we show up and help. So I think this is, beyond the issue of what does it need to look like and how aesthetically, it needs to be functional. It needs to have some toilets and some urinals and a place for us to, pull the grill in when we're done cooking and then pull the grill out. It's how just about every baseball complex does it. The parents man the grill, we man the concession stand, we have a fry daddy in there, we cook some french fries and onion rings and pop some popcorn. That's what we're looking for. But more importantly, we need our folks to be able to go use the restroom without having to go to a porta potty. So that's it. We're not Williamson County, we're not Rutherford County. We don't want to be them. We like Central High School. Let me commend you and thank you for the visionary approach that you took to say yes to build a school. Amazing. And it's going to be an incredible, incredible thing. Our baseball complex, softball complex is an incredible field. We're just asking to build some bathrooms. Nothing, they're talking around $150,000. We're all sitting back there going, well, we got some builders and some blockers and some brickers, and we're thinking, man, we can do this thing for $75,000. Now, that's just us talking, but we can get the manpower. We can do some stuff to trim the cost out, whatever that is. We just need your support in doing it. We need you to say, yes, move forward, get a plan, build a building, bare bones. It can look nice, bare bones. We paint it purple, anything looks good. That's our color, so paint it purple. Purple with some gray trim. I mean, it doesn't need to be bigger than it is. So, thank you.
I appreciate that. Mr. Pennings?
I appreciate your comments, sir, and you don't have to have children in school to care about the school system. I thank you. Mr. Williver can correct me if I'm wrong, but this body tonight at this meeting can make a recommendation to the whole board for the regular meeting to approve some funds. But this evening, this committee cannot make that decision. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Mr. Pennings. Again, I guess with that in mind, and again, that's kind of where I'm operating too. The option, I think Mr. Lindsay did bring this up, is and this would be on Mr. Hibden, if there's any way through goodwill or whatever else to go ahead and start taking some of what we've talked about and start talking about it and have something ready for us by the full board meeting. Mr. Pennings.
I would like to ask the gentleman that just spoke, seeing you're at the baseball games and that, how big of an area, how big a restroom do we need?
Well, I was going to say, if you want plans, I've got them drawn on a bunch of napkins. I've done that 1,000,000 times in the last 20 years.
Do we need rooms for
does
two?
that count? Is that official? I mean, I'll let you borrow them, but, I know there's probably codes and that kind of stuff that I'm not aware of. I can make grass green, but I can't build something. I'm just can't do it. But, I'm thinking in the women's side, 2 toilets. In the men's side, 1 toilet, 1 urinal, and a hand sink, in each one. Nothing more elaborate than that. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think we're going to have 5,000 people up there. It's just, and I don't think you'd have a line at the bathroom with just that. So, that's all we're looking for, something, like that. And like I said, just a shell for the concession stand, I think will be plenty.
Thank you, Coach.
Mr. Hibden, based on what he just gave us, and I'm again, these are not numbers we can hold you to. It seems like that would be a little less expensive than what we were originally talking about.
We need the head count it needs to be designed for. That'd be one thing,
So that would be a constraint, or is that just something we could come up with and give you?
You would need to give that to me.
Okay, so that's not a code issue that has to come from something else. Mr. Lindsay, do you have a number that you want to?
By no means am I a code expert, but I did learn to read, at Mount Pleasant High School, in Tennessee too, but, I pulled up the code this week, and I know, I saw where you got, your numbers from, going off that 500 number. If I remember right, it's one water closet, they call it, one toilet per 75 men, and one water closet per 40 women. So if we figure 200, of course, then you take that 200 number and divide it in half women, half men. So that would be 5 women's water closets and 2 men's. So I would think 200, if you look at the seating that's there, the codes inspector's got to look at that and pass that. And I know just from, and some of you guys here may been involved in it, but at the Little League complex just down the road, they just built a bathroom, and there's tons more seating there, and it passed, and if I remember right, it's just one on each side. It's one men, one women. So, and I know that's irrelevant as far as the code goes, but my point with that is they have adequate facilities there. So whatever we can do to keep the costs down, I think it's going to serve the need. And that's the reason I look at the 150, 200 number, whatever number that is, to keep those number of fixtures down. But and I know you based that off of number you were given, but half of those toilets would never be used, I think. But so does that give you? And I'm speaking for you guys.
No, I do have one question for you. Are you still wanting to look at the press box?
Well, I think it would only make sense while he's looking at it.
Okay.
If you don't do it, it's going to cost you a heck of a lot more to do it later than it would now. We'll never do it as cheap as we can do it tomorrow. And if you don't go with the 2-story building to accommodate both fields, then you're going to look at 2 separate ones at some point to accommodate each one. So you're talking about even more money. So I think it would be wise, even if obviously it's going to cost us more money, but it would be wise to look at that now, because in 5 years from now, it will have saved us money if we do it now rather than later.
Mr. Pennings.
I would make a motion to bring to the full board to take $100,000 out of the fund balance to build or look into to do the drawings and all the design and build a press box and concession and restroom at Central High School baseball field.
I'd love to second that, but we got a motion on the floor.
Did we get a second on that one?
Yeah,
I thought
Carrie
you would.
seconded, I thought. Or Kristen did, yeah.
Did you second that? Speak up.
Well, just to clarify that, and again, I may need some input from Jake. I think we determined that what we had originally asked in that first motion may not be within our power to do, is to ask SSOE to start working on something. Because again, that's going to start to generate some costs that we're just not able to do that, if I understand correctly.
You're right. I mean, I don't think you guys have the power to authorize that. You'd ask whatever you want to ask, but I think that from SSOE standpoint, they have to know that you're not the board, and they're not getting directive from the full board.
No, you can just make the motion to the board.
I don't know that invalidates the motion, but I think it's at least worth keeping in mind.
Okay. Well, Mr. Lindsey,
So how you want to handle this?
I'm furiously trying to scratch notes.
You're running
down
this show.
to make this work.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll withdraw my motion. And I'll second Mr. Penning's motion.
She said she's okay with withdrawal.
Okay, so we do have the first motion that has been withdrawn. We do have a second to Mr. Penning's motion. And let me make sure I have this correct, that we are going to move to the full board to approve spending of up to $100,000 to get started as soon as possible on building, as we've just described here, I guess, or 100,000, correct? Okay. To start building or start the process of a building again, meeting, I guess, the requirements we just gave you. I think it was 2 restrooms or per restroom, and then just a shell of a concession stand. Was there anything else on that? And look into the press box. That would be the motion. And a second. Is there any discussion on that? Mr. Lindsay?
I'm gonna quit sometime. Only question I have, Mr. Hibden, with the way this motion's made, obviously you don't want to do a lot of work that there's a possibility you're not gonna get paid for, just to be frank about it. But out of the goodness of your heart, is there any way that you could bring us back some information in 2 weeks that we could vote on?
If we can bring you back to something, I mean,
I'm not asking for a plan in 2 weeks, but just a,
well, I think you want to see if you want to approve it and try to move forward.
well, what my hope would be in 2 weeks that you come back and say, 100,000 won't do it, it's gonna take 175, or you come back and say 100,000 will. I think that's the only information we're waiting on, kinda, and that we could tell you, get started, we're gonna pay whatever bill you send us on it, but we just need a dollar figure. Am I reading you guys right? Chairman, you're the only one I can't read tonight, you're killing me, so. But,
If you don't mind piggybacking, I think what he's trying to say is you coming to us with some good information is going to be the best shot at this happening at the full board meeting and happening quickly enough that we can move ahead and actually have this done in time. I think that's kind of what we're saying here. Would that be fair enough, Mr. Lindsay?
yeah, that's,
Okay.
as long as Dwayne's agreeable, I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Mr. Pennings?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be willing to approve this tonight. I wish we could approve it tonight. Then bang, go spend the money and do it. But unfortunately, we can't approve it tonight.
I understand that there are certain procedures we need to adhere to. We cannot spend the money tonight. I fully understand this. I do feel like this is obtainable by May with good information. But with that being said, I think for us to come with as much information at the board meeting in 2 weeks, and I hope that Mr. Hibden will be so kind as to help us with this. But additionally, I would like to see us all empower ourselves with enough knowledge. I have heard about people in wheelchairs and with canes walking 100, how far? Down a gravel road. That is liability. That's what I'm hearing in my head. I'm hearing of people cooking and serving food without washing their hands, health concerns, liability. That is what I am hearing. So I would like, in trying to gather as much information and be as prepared as possible, I would like anyone who can to consider going and looking at this so that we can all make some informed decisions in the next 2 weeks, please.
Okay. Oh, Ms. Park?
In the interest of getting as much information as we possibly can, I know that the parents tonight have said that they would roll up their sleeves and help out too. Is there any way that they can kind of give us an idea of what they might be able to gather up? Because, asking this project to take off in 3 months is going to be a stress on everyone, and it's probably going to inconvenience y'all too, as y'all are playing games right now. So I'm just wondering if we could get an idea on that. I think you guys have already put in stuff as far as gravel and things like that, I've heard. So I don't know if that will reduce any of our costs, but if you know that you have suppliers that you normally use for some of these things that would then offset some of the costs that we would incur from SSOE, or would have ready bidders for SSOE and Hewlett Spencer, I think that would really help us to speed this process along, so.
I think to go with that, I mean, from all parties involved, the more information we have at that next meeting, if this is going to pass here in a minute, which it sounds like it might, the more information we can have from all parties, including our facilities department, if there's any piece we can add to it or information we need, is going to be the best way we can make that decision and make it quickly and figure out what's attainable.
And we can check on that. I think if Mr. Hibden's willing to work with us on that, we will make sure that we work with Mr. White. We'll talk about different design. Mr. White, Coach Pickle, folks from Central, we'll look at designs. We'll look at things like, sometimes it's very challenging when you hire a contractor to do things if you want to let self-perform some of the work, because it can get in the way of the contract. Contractors are they have a schedule, and so usually people are self-performing it. They can't come exactly at the right time, so that may be a challenge if you're trying to build this on a schedule. Now, if we weren't on a schedule, it might work. The other consideration is this is during baseball season. I think first baseball game is the beginning of March, so you've got that go. So there'll have to be some coordination as far as, and it's just a matter of putting a safety fence around it, the construction area, those kind of things, and we can work. But we'll have to work through all those details, but I feel like if Mr. Chibnall will work with us, we can put that together in some kind of report to you by the next meeting, which I think is the 28th, 2 weeks from tonight.
Yes.
And,
I think that's
and
what
let you
everyone
see.
here on the board is looking for, is as much information as we can get to make that decision, so. So we do have a motion, and a second, if there's any more discussion on that. If not, all in favor of, and we all know what the motion is at this point, of approving that motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Opposed. But that does pass. I know. So, that does pass, so that will go to the full board. And again, hopefully you guys can get us as much information as possible for that. Or do we need all 6 on that for this, since we've changed to 11 members? You're killing me.
I'll make another motion.
Good, because I was about to.
I'll make the motion that the only thing I want to change to Mr. Penning's motion is 150,000 rather than 100, just to move it forward.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on that, with the only change being to $150,000. Any discussion on that?
Yeah, how are you gonna vote?
You'll find out in a minute. Okay, that being the motion, no more discussion? Oh, Mr. Shackelford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know where we bought the block for Central. Does anybody know that? Do you happen to know?
The school or the field?
The school.
I'd have to look back in our.
Well, I know Fred Cassidy.
Music City Block.
Music City Block, okay. But they've done this sort of thing in the past. Allie Cassidy, Jimmy Alley, and Fred Cassidy. And there's a guy named Jimmy Couch that roomed with Fred in college. And I carried Jimmy Couch to Alaska. So if I have to call in a favor, we'll call in a favor. That's what we need to do. But the guy's got lots of block. So they've done this before, their business in town, and they have donated block on many occasions in the past. So I don't know that they've been called on much lately, because we really hadn't been too focused on athletics. So, but I'm willing to make a call to those gentlemen and see if I can get some. I'll try to bring you that information back for the full board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of that motion, $150,000 to move forward on this to the full board?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? I'm going to be opposed to it again. Mr. Lindsay?
Can I just ask you a question?
Sure.
What are you not going to be opposed to?
Again, from what I'm going through, this is rushed.
But we're just moving it to the board. We're not asking to take action. We're just asking to carry it 2 weeks further. Because you're going to kill it tonight if we don't move it out of here.
Yes. And I apologize if that's offensive to other people on here, but again, I don't like, as we've moved through this over the last few months, we've made some decisions I feel like that end up being rushed. And I feel like this has ended up being a rushed decision. And I understand that there are some concerns. There's some health concerns that have been brought up. But those are long-standing concerns, and those are not something that showed up yesterday, and they've been going on. So I don't like making decisions that are rushed on that. And I feel like that's what we're doing. We're making a rushed decision, and I don't think we're going to get the best product out of it. And that's where I stand on it. Nothing else on that. We've got the next item on the list is the, let's see, item 9, the SRO activity report. And Stan, if you want to, I can go through that pretty quick, because I know we've been here a while. This is something I'd asked to be included. I know that the county commission has had this for a while. This is just something that we, as an FYI item, we're not asking anybody to review this with us or have anybody go it. Just it's going to be included in our monthly packet. So if there's any questions anybody has about that, let me know. Otherwise, we can move on. Item 10 is zoning. Stan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did, at Chairman Moore's request, provide you with some information that would help you as you think about enrollment numbers for next year, if there would be any zoning issues to be addressed. Dr. Marzak, if he was here, I know he's already made the statement he is not in favor of addressing growth issues through rezoning, but through new construction. You will see that we've provided you a couple of things. The first of those is a list of our enrollment at the end of last year, the 9th month of last year, the enrollment of the first month of this year, showed you the increase, decrease by school, showed you the enrollment in the 5th month, which was at the end of this past semester. Actually, these numbers were effective right at the end of the break. And then the increase since the beginning, or decrease since the beginning of the year, school year. We've put down the student capacity at the original capacity by the basis of the numbers we have. I know there's been some question about that, and that's being examined in the assessment. The second one, capacity at current use, was some numbers we went through a few years ago in the principals, looking at how the building was currently configured, adding computer labs and special ed rooms and those kind of things, what that was, and then figured a percent of capacity based on that capacity at current use. It's where we are based on our current enrollment. In addition to that, you have the current building permit figures from the city of Spring Hill, which were up to date through December, shows their breakdown of building permits issued in total, and then those issued for Williamson County, Murray County. Also, the yearly report for the city of Columbia, which shows the building permits issued, and that you've got the 2014 and the 2015 year report, which we were able to get from the city of Columbia. So we provide this information to you, and if you have any questions, try to address those.
Thank you, Stan. Again, the reason I brought this up, I know we had some lengthy discussions last summer about zoning issues, and I am glad that from what Dr. Marzak has said is he is intent on solving any future issues without having to go through rezoning, and I know I'm happy to hear that myself. I just wanted us to start having this discussion a little bit earlier and maybe figure out and maybe some discussion with you, Stan, on the best way to bring this up on an annual basis so that we're a little bit ahead of the game, make sure we're aware of what the numbers are looking like, and maybe anything we want to talk about. I know this will probably also be included in, again, with the assessment as we're looking at facilities and what's going on from this point forward. So any board members have any questions on that or comments on the zoning side?
Let me, if I could, just add one piece of information. And I did get this today, just to throw this in. There was one thing, and I haven't had a chance to talk with Ms. Huff about this, but in her numbers, there was a couple of assumptions I don't think she's totally correct, because she showed Cox Middle School all going to Spring Hill High School, and they don't. Part of them go to Whitthorne, and part of them go to Cox. She showed all of the students from the Columbia schools going to Whitthorne, and some of them go to Cox. So we would need to make sure we break that out. And I just wanted to share with you, just because pressure, that right now, if you look at I did gather the information today. Right now, if you take the Spring Hill Middle School students who are 8th graders and the Cox Middle School students who we project would go to Spring Hill High School, that's 285 incoming freshmen at Spring Hill High School, which is this year at Spring Hill High School, we have, let me get you that number real quickly, 211. No, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong line. 339. We have 339. That's 285. Of course, we don't know how many new students are going to move in to the neighborhoods. Also, the new students that would be going to Spring Hill Middle School from Spring Hill Elementary, Marvin Wright, and also you remember there were some students that were rezoned to Randolph Howell that will go back. And that's a total of 222, and this year we have 200 and, let me get on the right line, 11 fifth graders. So that number would jump to 222 fifth graders at the middle school. But still, right now, it looks like the capacity is there for one more year. Again, we can't anticipate, as you know, there's pretty explosive growth going on. When you look at these numbers, we don't know exactly how many new students are going to show up to register for our schools. But at this point, we may be able to get through next year, but obviously, long-term, we've got to address some issues.
Okay. Mr. Pennings?
Well, I disagree with her on McDowell, because McDowell, they have 2 or 3 classes already out in the hallway and out in stairways. So for me, for them to say that the capacity is okay, numbers-wise, it may be per room, but how the rooms are laid out and what you're using the rooms for, McDowell is at capacity and over capacity right now. And Withorn will be shortly. That I agree on.
Yes, sir, we'll have more information on that from the assessment.
I do have one more question on that, and again, since our transportation person is here, if he doesn't mind me asking him a question. Well, there had been some discussion earlier about some different software possibly with the transportation. Is that going to, if you could, come up? And while you're walking there, is that something you're still looking at, or is that something that we need to eventually factor into how we're, what's going on at the schools and where
Yes,
kids are going?
We're pretty in-depth right now in that. In fact, Mr. Breeden and I looked at a portion of a program this week, and I was talking to Ms. Fouch. We may have that in time to be before you in 2 weeks. If not, it's definitely going to be before you in February. We're looking at right now moving to a completely new system that honestly would be like going from a joystick Atari kind of up to the new Xbox on what it would do for us, but what it would also do for parents on notifications of where buses are, on tracking of buses, on lots of things. So we are preparing that right now and working for that. And I know along with that, we deferred transportation policies, and I know this is facilities. We deferred transportation policies, I believe, in July, and we have them ready to come before you next month as well. So there's lots of next month's your transportation month. Let me just put it that way. And there's lots of, I'll just go ahead and tell you, there's lots of people that need lots of things, but we think we can cover the costs mostly from me, but we're going to also have some things to come up. But yes, we are completely looking to that, and then that will help us as far as the routing for the zones that we have currently.
All right, thank you. Did you have some questions? If there's no other questions on that, I guess we can move ahead to the next item, facilities donations.
This is just a report to you of some donations that have been made in the last couple of months. You can see one there, painting at Riverside Elementary, which was donated to Thompson Station Church. We actually provided the paint, and they hired a professional painting company to come in and repaint these areas. So it was pretty impressive. I thought they were going to use volunteers. There might have been a little bit of volunteer, but there was a professional painting company there. Dave, I think you saw those. I don't remember the name of the company, but they were there. And then Mount Pleasant Middle School has a donation of a storage building that's going on their softball field.
Okay.
So that's the information on those.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate that, Stan. I think that covers the items here. We're down to the last item, which is adjournment. So if anyone wants to make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And I'll second that. All in favor of adjournment? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.
I was about to leave, but I didn't want to leave y'all hanging.